The youngest Duke, Charles Bennox, announces his intention to propose to Miss Natalie, a declaration that shatters the room's polite facade. The news is impossible, a nightmare for Fiona, who desired the Duke more than anything. She rushes forward, grabbing his sleeve and pleading that he must have meant her name, Fiona, but he coldly slaps her hand away. With ice in his voice, he states that the one he likes, the one he wants to marry, is Miss Natalie. Standing beside the Duke, Natalie offers a saccharine apology to her dear sister, explaining that matters of the heart can't be forced. Internally, however, she revels in their panicked expressions, a cold smile playing on her lips as she thinks this is just the beginning of their despair. She vows that not a single one of them will escape her revenge. This moment of triumph was months in the making, beginning when she first opened her eyes to a world she thought she'd lost. Her face was still intact, her loyal maid Bella was still alive, and a wave of stunning realization washed over her. She had been reborn a year before all the bad things happened. At a garden table, she watches her stepsister Fiona flirt shamelessly with Ryan Constance, the very picture of harmony. But for Natalie, this idyllic scene is a poisoned memory, a reminder that all the pain she suffered in her last life was because of these two people. She was the only heir of the Count of Callisler, left lonely after her mother's passing. Her busy father, racked with guilt, brought home a stepmother and her daughter Fiona when Natalie was 9 years old. Desperate for mother's love, Natalie eagerly accepted her new family. Years later, that same stepmother introduced her to the charming Ryan Constance, a man she believed was her destined prince. The fairy tale shattered less than 2 months after their wedding when Ryan revealed his true, monstrous nature, greedy, violent, and lecherous. When she finally found the courage to ask for a divorce, he beat her to death in a drunken rage. In her dying moments, she understood the horrifying truth. Ryan had been a pawn of her stepmother and Fiona all along, a tool to trap her while they murdered her father and seized the family fortune. Now, back in the present, when Ryan offers her a brooch, she sees the trap clearly. Playing the part of a naive fool, she sighs that it would be a shame to wear it to the Countess Blanche's banquet without the matching set. Flustered but desperate to keep her hooked, Ryan quickly promises to get her the entire set before the party. Later, her maid Bella confirms her suspicions. Fiona's maid bought the jewelry and secretly passed it to Ryan's servant. Natalie's eyes harden. She knows exactly what they want, everything belonging to the Earl of Callister. In her past life, she was foolish, but given this second chance, she will never let them harm her or her father again. Her revenge begins with a masquerade ball, an event her stepmother always ensured she missed in her past life so Fiona could attend. So no more. She informs a stunned Bella that she is going to fight Fiona for Master Illy, the man her stepsister desperately wants. From now on, she will not give anything to Fiona. Instead, she will take everything Fiona desires, starting with her dream of marrying into the Duke's mansion. To avoid her duplicitous stepmother, she claims her grandmother has requested her presence, feigning illness. She can't bear to see the woman's face, knowing that if she did, she might just tear her apart. 3 days later, at the glittering masquerade, Natalie spots her target, Illy Bennox, the cheerful and approachable young master. Her plan is simple: confess to Illy in Fiona's name, then act insane when he rejects her, forever tarnishing Fiona's reputation in his eyes. She sees him speaking with his uncle, the formidable Duke Bennox. And when Illy begins to leave, she sees her chance. On impulse, she snatches a bottle of wine from a passing waiter and begins to follow him, her heart pounding with nervous energy. Suddenly, a firm hand grabs her wrist, yanking her back. It's Duke Bennox, his crimson eyes burning with suspicion as he demands to know what she's doing. He accuses her of following his nephew with malicious intent. Illy quickly comes to her defense, insisting she's harmless. But the Duke is unmoved, demanding she remove her mask to prove she isn't an assassin. Cornered and panicked, Natalie realizes her original plan is ruined. Staring at the Duke's scrutinizing gaze, she makes a new, far more chaotic decision. Since he forced her hand, she'll drag him into the mess. She removes her mask, looks him dead in the eye, and declares that she likes him, Duke Bennox. The confession stuns both men into silence. A wicked satisfaction fills her as she watches the Duke's displeased expression. This newfound audacity is intoxicating. He can only mutter that she's a crazy woman. Just as she prepares to flee, Illy exclaims that he remembers her now. He reveals he is Miss Natalie Callister and that her father had once shown him her portrait. The revelation clicks into place. Her father had intended for her and Illy to be matched, which is why Fiona and her mother were so desperate to sabotage it. The Duke's cold voice cuts in, asking if she's sure it's not Illy she's interested in. Thinking fast, she tells him not to worry and to forget it ever happened. But Illy, ever the cheerful fool, completely misreads the situation and enthusiastically promises to help her win his uncle's heart. Natalie is internally mortified by his offer but has no choice but to accept gracefully. Back at the mansion, Fiona bursts into her room in a rage, screaming to her mother that her carriage mysteriously broke down, causing her to miss the party and her chance with Illy. While bathing, she takes out her anger on a maid for pulling her hair. But her mother simply dismisses the servant, comforting her daughter and assuring her she will marry into the Duke's house no matter what. At that moment, a servant announces Natalie's return. She sweeps into the room, flanked by a new cook and a group of stern-looking guards. With a serene smile, Natalie explains to her stunned stepmother and stepsister that her grandfather sent them, as he was worried about potential dangers at home, a veiled threat that hangs heavy in the air, signaling the start of a new war. Natalie is stunned to see her father standing before her, alive and well, a sight that brings tears to her eyes as she remembers the future that was stolen from him. Her father rushes to her side, his voice filled with concern as he demands to know who bullied his precious daughter, promising his full support. Though she burns to expose her malicious stepmother, Natalie holds her tongue, knowing she lacks the evidence to do so without putting her father in a difficult position. Instead, she collapses into his arms, claiming she was just crying because she missed him so much. He chuckles, calling her his little kitten, completely unaware that in her past life, 107 days had passed since his death. She silently vows that this time, she will not allow anyone to harm him. She smoothly explains her recent trip, mentioning she brought back a skilled chef and a guard from her grandfather's house for her protection, an arrangement her father readily accepts. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a regal blonde woman furiously questions a maid about who dared to approach Duke Charles, her jewels scattering across the floor in her rage. The maid trembles, confessing it was the young lady from Count Calisier's residence. The noblewoman sneers, disgusted that a mere count's daughter would covet her Charles, and coldly implies the maid knows what must be done to handle the situation. The next day, Natalie is consumed by anxiety over her bold confession to Duke Ben Knox, her poor complexion betraying her inner turmoil. She reveals to her maid the terrifying truth she's uncovered. Every woman who gets close to the Duke ends up in a terrible situation. Horrifying images flash through her mind: disfigurement, assault, or being forced into a marriage with an inhuman monster. The crushing reality hits her that she confessed to this very man just last night. As her maid panics, a servant arrives with an invitation from Duke Ben Knox himself, sending a chill of dread down Natalie's spine. Steeling herself, she decides to face him, reasoning he wouldn't act against her in his own residence. As she arrives, a dark figure watches her from a window above, wondering what business she has there. Inside, Natalie is perplexed when two maids are sent to guide her, a courtesy far above her station. Her confusion deepens when she comes face to face with the imposing Duke Ben Knox. He seems just as surprised as she is, and it's soon clarified that it was the former Duke who summoned her. The Duke internally curses his cousin Illy for selling him out, while Natalie correctly deduces that Illy must have tattled about her confession to the Duke's father. With a newfound sense of security, she follows the Duke into a grand living room, where he announces her arrival to his father. The room is filled with the Duke's entire family, all watching her intently. The former Duke comments on how considerate his son is for personally escorting her, and Natalie realizes this has turned into a massive misunderstanding. The family immediately begins fawning over them, calling them a perfect match, and even asking when they plan to marry. Charles flatly denies any relationship between them, much to his father's visible disappointment. The former Duke laments that his son is getting old and he can't risk scaring away a good woman who likes him. Seeing her chance, Natalie seizes the moment, declaring her sincere feelings for the Duke and her hope that he will one day reciprocate, playing the part of the perfect, devoted future daughter-in-law. Duke Ben Knox can only stare, thinking she is not only insane but also an incredibly talented actress. The former Duke is overjoyed, telling them to spend time together, completely steamrolling his son's objections. As Natalie prepares to depart, she is given a lavish welcome gift from the former Duke, which he graciously accepts. To everyone's surprise, the Duke announces he will personally see her home. On her way out, Natalie playfully tells a guilty-looking Illy that he'll have to protect her now, all while calculating that becoming a duchess is the only way to truly protect herself and her father from their enemies. In the suffocating silence of the carriage, the Duke's murderous glare unnerves her. He coldly instructs her to tell his father she has fallen for someone else, stating bluntly that she cannot like him. With perfect poise, Natalie refuses, claiming she now feels worthy of his affection after receiving his family's approval and has decided to truly pursue him. His voice drops to a lethal whisper as he tells her she would die before ever becoming his wife, warning her that anyone who likes him meets a bad end. She asks if cutting ties now would guarantee her safety, but his silence is the only answer she needs. Realizing she's already in danger, Natalie doubles down on her gamble, declining his offer and calmly exiting the carriage. As she walks away, she knows her only shield is the former Duke's favor. Watching her go, the Duke decides to let the situation play out, concluding that his father's protection is better than her facing her enemies alone. But her trials are far from over, as her maid immediately informs her that the troublemaking young Master Ryan has returned, adding yet another complication to her already precarious life. Young Master Ryan professes his undying love for Natalie, presenting her with a bouquet of flowers and hoping she'll accept his feelings. Natalie feigns shock and flattery, but internally her mind races with contempt. She knew her manipulative stepmother couldn't resist calling this scumbag over the moment she learned of Duke Benox's invitation. Her stepsister Fiona chimes in with fake envy, remarking how well Ryan treats her with such carefully selected gifts. A cruel plan forms in Natalie's mind. She decides to give them just a small inkling of hope, a little taste of victory that will make their eventual disappointment all the more crushing. As her stepmother praises Ryan as the key to a joyous life, Natalie masterfully plays her part, admitting she admires him as well, which makes the young master's face light up with glee. But she quickly tempers his excitement, explaining that her father advised her to test any suitor's sincerity before promising her hand in marriage. While Ryan looks flustered, the stepmother eagerly agrees on his behalf, assuring Natalie that he is more than willing to accept her test. Natalie, with a thankful smile, accepts his gifts to respond to his feelings, and warns him not to let her down before gracefully excusing herself to her room, leaving the schemers to their devices. The moment she's gone, the facade drops, and Fiona begins to bicker with Ryan, who complains that Natalie wasn't as easy to coax as she used to be. The stepmother silences them, unveiling her new plan. Since Natalie loves reading, they will win her over with rare and valuable books. As Natalie walks down the hall, she knows their plot is already in motion. The next day at a bookshop, she thanks her father for accompanying her, all the while setting her own trap to have him witness Fiona's maid delivering a book to Ryan, forever linking them in his mind. As she reaches for an interesting-looking book on a high shelf, another hand reaches for it at the same time, their fingers brushing against each other. She looks up in surprise to find herself face-to-face with the formidable Duke Benox, who coolly tells her she can keep the change. Her father greets the Duke nervously, and Charles advises that she should leave such a commoner's place. The Duke then sternly warns her father to take her home to avoid unwanted rumors, a warning that sends a chill down the Count's spine as he recalls having nightmares about the man. As they prepare to leave, Natalie seizes the opportunity, apologizing for her rudeness but then boldly asking to borrow the book from the Duke. He agrees, though his eyes flash with annoyance, and Natalie quickly steers her father down a shortcut, feigning innocence. Just as planned, her father spots Fiona's maid handing a book to Ryan. Natalie whispers that Fiona must like Ryan and they should leave them to their privacy. With a sweet smile, she then urges her father to help bring the two lovebirds together, claiming she only wants her sister to be happy. Their walk is violently interrupted as a cloaked man rushes past and suddenly lunges at her with a knife. Her father screams her name in terror, but before the blade can find its mark, a powerful wave of ice freezes the air, stopping the assassin in his tracks. Duke Benox stands before them, his power radiating as he effortlessly incapacitates the attacker. He asks if Natalie is all right, but as she reassures her frantic father, she can't help but wonder why the cold Duke saved her. His guards apprehend the assassin, and he turns to her, his expression unreadable. He tells her she should be more worried about herself if she can't even stay safe, coldly warning her to stay away from him. Despite his harsh words, her father thanks him profusely, and Charles agrees to handle the interrogation. Just then, Princess Alia arrives, calling out to Charles and suggesting fate keeps bringing them together. After introductions are made, the princess remarks on how terrified Natalie must have been, a comment laced with subtle venom. Charles cuts her off, declaring that while there is nothing between him and Natalie, he is responsible for her safety as an ally of his dukedom, and anyone who harms her will make an enemy of his family. The princess's smile tightens as Charles announces he's escorting Natalie home and departs, leaving her fuming in his wake. Watching them leave, Alia's face contorts with rage as she vows to make Natalie pay for stealing Charles from her, ordering her maid to ensure they are kept apart. In the carriage, Natalie's father warns her to stay away from the Duke, but she reasons that if the rumors about him were true, he would have let her die. A chilling thought dawns upon her: the assassination attempt was Alia's doing, a violent and possessive way of claiming the Duke as her own. Upon arriving home, Charles gives her a final warning: stay away from him or it will happen again. He offers his protection in exchange for her accepting his proposal, but she refuses, knowing it's safer to rely on the Grand Duke's favor, which sees her as a perfect future daughter-in-law. Amused by her stubbornness, he warns her he can't always be there to save her, then rides away. Unseen, Fiona and her mother witness the entire exchange, and Fiona seethes with jealousy, demanding her mother keep them apart. Her mother devises a new plan, telling Fiona to express Ryan's worry to the soft-hearted Natalie. Fiona rushes in with a performance of concern, eventually mentioning how terribly worried Ryan is. Natalie smiles, knowing the real reason he's coming, and says she welcomes him, ready for the drama to finally unfold. That evening, Ryan is announced. Before he can speak, Natalie cheerfully declares that her father knows his intentions and has agreed to move forward with the marriage between him and Fiona, complete with a generous dowry. Ryan's world shatters as Fiona and her mother stare in disbelief. Fiona stammers that she doesn't like Ryan, but Natalie cuts her off, revealing she saw the maid delivering the books and now understands Fiona's hidden feelings, expressing how sorry she feels for her sister. The stepmother realizes their plot has been exposed and tries to stall. But Natalie sweetly insists her father will make a thoughtful decision for both his daughters, internally promising Fiona the wedding of her dreams. Miles away, Duke Charles receives a report on Ryan's pursuit of Natalie. He orders his aide to investigate further, musing that if Ryan is suitable, bringing them together would be the perfect way to finally keep her at a distance. Princess Alia's mind churns with suspicion as a maid reports that Ryan Constance, the second son of a count, is pursuing Miss Natalie. Her fingers grip her cup tightly. After Duke Benox learned of this, he immediately dispatched his people to investigate Ryan in secret. Alia questions whether Charles truly has feelings for Natalie, but regardless, she orders her maid to ensure that the man Charles is investigating is found to be a good person, no matter the truth. Meanwhile, at the Duke's mansion, a raven delivers a message to Duke Charles Benox himself. The report paints a glowing picture of Ryan Constance, describing him as an honest, upright man and an ideal marriage partner. Charles scoffs internally at the description, his mind already racing to find the fastest way to push Natalie and this ideal man together as he casually burns the report. As if summoned by his thoughts, Natalie Carlyle appears, requesting permission to borrow a book. The timing is almost too perfect, and Charles sees his opportunity to set his plan in motion. He smoothly tells her he will join her in the study shortly, a surprising lack of resistance that leaves Natalie momentarily confused by his strange attitude. The moment she's gone, Charles scribbles a hasty note, summoning Ryan Constance to the Duke's mansion at once, and sends the message off with his raven. In the Grand Library, Natalie meets young Masterly, who is struggling to find a book about romantic operas. Displaying an astonishingly precise memory, she directs him to the exact chapter of an obscure book, leaving Ellie stunned that she could recall such details so clearly. He finds the book, confirms she was right, and gushes that he never expected her to be so amazing. Their pleasant chat is cut short by the arrival of Charles, who coolly observes them. He takes Natalie's hand, ignoring Ellie's praise for her, and leads her away, stating she can read the military book she requested here but cannot take it home. As they sit in silence, Natalie senses an opportunity, noticing his genuine interest in the text. She breaks the silence, dissecting the book's outdated fortress designs with sharp, modern military insight. Charles is genuinely impressed, realizing he had completely underestimated her intellect. Watching them, Illy thinks his uncle has finally found an interest, and rashly invites Natalie to visit the mansion more often to create more opportunities for them. This proves to be a mistake. A dark look crosses Charles's face as he icily tells his nephew it's time to leave. Illy freezes, sensing his uncle's palpable anger, and hastily makes an excuse to flee the room in a panic. Now they are alone, and Natalie playfully asks if he was jealous, a suggestion he curtly dismisses by calling Ellie noisy. Before she can feign more disappointment, a maid announces the arrival of young Master Ryan. Ryan enters and is visibly shocked to find Natalie there with the Duke. His mind races with rumors as he offers obsequious flattery to Charles, a stark contrast to the report the Duke had received. Seeing his plan falling into place, Charles excuses himself, leaving the two of them alone to read. Natalie immediately understands his game. He's playing matchmaker. She decides to play along for her own amusement and twisted goals. Ryan wastes no time, confessing that he only has feelings for her and asking her to be with him. Natalie smirks, telling him she has a surprise in store, before suddenly ripping her own dress with a sharp tear. She lets out a piercing scream. The sound travels down the hall, stopping Charles in his tracks. He was trying to push her away for her own safety, but this changes everything. He whirls around and storms back into the room, his face a mask of fury. He finds Natalie crumpled on the floor, her dress torn, and Ryan in a state of shock. Without a moment's hesitation, Charles roars for the guards to arrest Ryan Constance. Ryan is seized, frantically proclaiming his innocence and realizing with dawning horror that Natalie is framing him. Natalie, meanwhile, plays the part of a fragile victim, claiming she was so frightened her legs gave out. Charles immediately scoops her into his arms. She's momentarily surprised by the gesture, noting that he's far more caring than the cold rumors suggest. Ryan continues to scream that he's being framed, but Natalie counters with a tearful performance, asking how she could possibly harm herself when she has such strong feelings for him. Ryan calls her a liar, his desperation growing, which is exactly what Natalie wants. She proposes an investigation, knowing it will expose his dirty deals with Fiona. The threat works perfectly. Ryan stumbles over his words, his panic evident. Charles looks down at him with contempt, declaring that no investigation is needed. He trusts Lady Natalie completely. He orders his men to take Ryan away and whip him as a lesson. Ryan is dragged away, his future ruined, screaming in despair. As the sounds of the whip crack through the air, Natalie listens with a cold, serene smile, savoring the beautiful sound of his agony. This is only the beginning. She silently vows that the beating he's receiving is just an appetizer in her feast of revenge for the humiliation he subjected her to in her past life. She will return everything he did to her twofold, making him experience a hell worse than death. Charles notices she's shaking and asks if she's all right. She blames it on the bloody sight of the flogging and asks to lean on him, and he readily carries her again, though he finds her behavior utterly baffling. Privately, he wonders what could drive a woman to such extreme lengths, to hurt herself just to frame a man. His thoughts are interrupted when an aide reports that the initial investigation into Ryan was a complete failure. The man is a known scoundrel and gambler. A wave of guilt washes over Charles. He realizes his own rush to push them together put her in this dangerous situation. But before he can apologize, his uncle, the Grand Duke, storms in with Illy, berating Charles for allowing Natalie to be injured under his care. Natalie quickly defends the Duke, downplaying her injury. The Grand Duke softens, telling her she's too understanding, and decides to spare Charles for now, before adding that he has something he needs to ask her personally. In the carriage, Charles cuts straight to the point, his sharp gaze fixed on Natalie as he demands to know about her grievances with Ryan Constance. A flicker of panic crosses Natalie's face. She can't possibly reveal the truth about her past life's torment. Thinking fast, she crafts a plausible lie, explaining that she recently rejected Ryan's confession, which must have embarrassed him into taking vengeful action. With a soft, devoted look, she reassures Charles that her heart is set only on him, and she would never lie about such a thing. But Charles remains unconvinced, coolly stating that the evidence from the scene, the shape of the cut and blood splatters, can easily reveal the perpetrator. Seeing her lie about to unravel, Natalie clutches her head, feigning a sudden dizzy spell from her earlier blood loss. Charles, internally sighing at her transparent acting, decides not to waste his words on an injured person, planning to investigate Ryan himself. As she leans against him, feigning weakness, he is struck by how difficult this woman is to deal with. When they arrive at her estate, her father is aghast at her injury. Charles offers his apologies, but the Count curtly refuses his offer of medicine, clearly wanting to keep the infamous Duke away from his daughter. Just as Charles turns to leave, Natalie stops him, her voice filled with a desperate plea for him to visit her every day while she recovers. Intrigued by her lack of resentment, he agrees, a faint smile playing on his lips as he promises he's looking forward to it. Once he's gone, she reassures her worried father that her injury is unrelated to the Duke, a cold fire burning in her eyes as she internally vows to make the true culprit pay for what they did. The very next day, a maid bursts in announcing that the Grand Duke and young Master Illy have come to visit in person. The family greets the esteemed guests, who arrive laden with expensive gifts. Illy remarks with a grin that Natalie is clearly the most important person to his family now, earning a sharp rebuke from Charles. Natalie's stepmother whispers to her daughter Fiona, urging her to use this opportunity to get closer to Illy. Fiona tries to engage the young master, but his attention is solely on Natalie, asking if she enjoys sweets. Seething with jealousy, Fiona storms to her mother, demanding they stop Natalie from forging a connection with the Duke's mansion. Her mother smiles cruelly, revealing she already has a plan in motion. The Duke's family would never accept a future mistress with a malicious character, and Natalie will soon become just that. The group proceeds to Natalie's room, where she greets them gracefully. The old Duke is overjoyed to see her in high spirits, but her father worries that Duke Binox is far too dangerous for his daughter. Fiona clenches her fists, consumed by rage, wondering what spell this wench has cast to win over the most desirable bachelor in the Empire. Observing her stepsister's fury, Natalie decides to add more fuel to the fire. She thanks her guests profusely, claiming their kindness makes her injuries feel like nothing, a statement that only deepens the old Duke's affection. Later, Illy cleverly engineers a situation where everyone leaves for tea, insisting that his uncle stay behind alone with Natalie to watch over her. As Charles enters her room, he finds her struggling to change her own bandages. He tells her to drop the act, knowing she could have called a maid, but offers to help her himself. As he gently touches her arm, she's shocked by his tenderness, a stark contrast to the ruthless man she thought he was. Without warning, he tears the old gauze off with his teeth, apologizing and explaining it's a more efficient army habit. When they rejoin the others for tea, a maid named Masha accidentally spills the hot liquid. The maid immediately collapses, begging Natalie not to kill her over a simple mistake. Everyone is stunned, and the family rushes to defend Natalie's character. But Natalie's mind flashes back to her past life, where this very maid, Masha, was a spy for Ryan Constance who betrayed her and sealed her fate in a cold prison cell. She sees it all clearly now. Masha is a pawn sent by her stepmother to ruin her. And this is the perfect prologue to her revenge. Fiona suggests they hear Natalie out, confident she will incriminate herself. All eyes turn to Natalie as the Duke asks for an explanation. To their astonishment, she declares that she is not innocent at all. With tears in her eyes, she proclaims that if Masha is this terrified, then Natalie must have unknowingly done something wrong, and she begs the Duke to investigate the matter so she can learn from her shortcomings. This brilliant display of humility impresses the Dukes. Natalie then skillfully corners her stepmother by rejecting her offer to lead the investigation, pointing out that a mother's love would surely lead to a biased result. And for the sake of her own reputation, an impartial party like the Duke must be the one to find the truth. Defeated, the stepmother can only watch as the Duke orders his guards to take Masha to his mansion for questioning. With a final whispered threat to Masha about her family, the stepmother seals the maid's fate. Masha snaps, her mind breaking under the pressure, screaming that the nobles are all villains before lunging forward with a hidden knife. Charles roars for Natalie to watch out, shielding her with his body just as the blade flashes. A maid named Jenny screams in terror, damning them all to hell, but before the blade can reach Natalie, a dark energy blast shatters the weapon. She looks up in shock to see that Duke Benox has saved her from harm once again. But the immediate danger is replaced by a new horror, as the maid lies dead on the floor in a pool of her own blood. The onlookers whisper in shock, believing the servant committed suicide to escape her punishment. Natalie internally scoffs at their naivety, recognizing the ruthless hand of her stepmother at play. The sight of so much blood is overwhelming, and the world goes dark as she faints, collapsing into Duke Benox's arms. Her father, Count Carlyle, cries out her name in panic, ordering someone to carry her to her room. With a cold, unreadable expression, Duke Benox agrees to do it himself. From the sidelines, his nephew princely smirks, wishing his uncle good luck and hoping he takes full advantage of this opportunity. Natalie's stepsister watches with pure hatred in her eyes, vowing that she will never forgive Natalie for stealing the attention of both men. Benox effortlessly carries Natalie from the room. The moment they are alone, his demeanor shifts and he tells her she can stop pretending. Annoyed by his perception, Natalie stays limp in his arms, but he suddenly lets go, forcing a yelp out of her as she plummets towards the floor, only to be caught at the last second. She thanks him through gritted teeth, but he is unimpressed, asking how long she plans to keep up her act. He lifts her chin, his gaze intense, and suggests that since they are alone, they should do something more intimate. Flustered by his forwardness, Natalie nervously agrees, and he tells her to close her eyes. Her mind races, convinced he's about to test her by kissing her, a line she's not ready to cross. But Benox is simply analyzing her, deducing that she's clinging to him as a shield to escape her current predicament with her family. A small smile plays on his lips as he finds her act amusing. He decides to maintain their current relationship, telling her to rest well before turning to leave and deal with the maid's situation, much to Natalie's utter frustration. Outside the estate under the moonlight, Count Carlyle worries about his daughter when he is approached by Princess Alia. She greets him with a disarming smile, but asks why she heard rumors that his daughter was attacked by an assassin. Carlyle freezes, realizing this is a veiled threat, as the princess warns him that scarier things await Natalie in the future. Left with a stark warning, Carlyle resolves that the only way to protect Natalie is to marry her off quickly, concluding that a match with Prince Ali would secure the Duke's protection. Elsewhere, Prince Ali interrupts his uncle's work with an invitation from Carlyle for afternoon tea. Duke Benox coldly tells Ali to go in his stead, bringing gifts. Ali arrives at the Carlyle estate and is greeted by Natalie and her father. He presents a gift from his uncle, which Natalie accepts graciously. Her father internally sighs with relief, believing Duke Benox's absence is a signal that he understands the situation and won't pursue Natalie, leaving the way clear for Ali. But back at his mansion, Duke Benox suddenly decides he will go to the Carlyle Palace after all, ordering his aide to prepare his clothes. In the garden, Natalie realizes her father is still trying to matchmake her with Ali. Their conversation is cut short by the sudden, intimidating arrival of Duke Benox himself. The group is taken aback when he appears in the gardens, and just as her father is praising the match between her and Ali, Natalie shocks everyone by declaring that she only spent time with Illy to get closer to Duke Bennox. Illy, ever the opportunist, quickly recovers and claims his whole family hopes for a match between her and his uncle. Seizing the chance, Natalie asks Illy if the Duke has ever loved a woman. Illy pauses, then confirms that his uncle does indeed have someone special in his heart. The revelation stuns Natalie, but before she can process it, Illy yelps as he sees his uncle standing right behind him. Duke Bennox greets the stunned party and takes a seat. He immediately silences his nephew's gossiping by threatening to cut his allowance, which works instantly. As he sips his tea, Natalie's mind churns. The Duke didn't deny having someone in his heart, which complicates her plans immensely. Lost in thought, she accidentally knocks over the hot teapot, but in a blur of motion, Bennox uses his magic to shatter it midair, saving her from being burned. He asks if she is all right, and while she is unharmed, she notices a fresh burn on his hand from where he protected her. Meanwhile, in a shady tavern, Natalie's stepsister meets with a cloaked man who demands 100 gold coins for his services against Natalie. She accuses him of blackmail and gambling the money away, but he coldly threatens to expose their entire plot to Count Carlyle, forcing her hand. Ryan's eyes glint with malice as he asks Fiona if she's threatening him, and with a cold smile, he confirms that yes, he is, daring her to do something about it. Fiona's face contorts with rage, a silent scream of frustration building inside her as she realizes she's powerless against a penniless gambler who has nothing to lose. Swallowing her pride, she shoves a small pouch into his hand containing 10 gold coins, explaining it's all she has for now and that she'll prepare the rest later today. But Ryan isn't finished. He demands she send the rest immediately and adds a new, crushing condition. From now on, she must prepare 100 gold coins for him every month until he marries that bitch Natalie. Shocked but cornered, Fiona agrees, cursing the damn gambler under her breath as he walks away. Ryan smirks to himself, thinking how much easier Fiona is to fool than Natalie and how the Earl promised a handsome dowry if he married her. Elsewhere, Natalie expresses her concern over Duke Charles Bennox's burn, but his nephew Illy assures her that his uncle is a tough military man, accustomed to far worse. Natalie gazes at the Duke, her mind drifting back to his past, remembering the constant news of his narrow escapes on the battlefield. The entire empire envied him as a child of destiny, but she knew his medals were won at the cost of his life, and she silently wishes he never had to earn them. When Charles asks what she said, Natalie looks him in the eye and repeats her wish, saying that without the fame and military exploits, he wouldn't have to get hurt. Her words strike a chord deep within him, triggering a memory of his childhood where his injuries were met not with comfort, but with praise for his bravery and the expectations of the Bennox family. He realizes in that moment that kindness can be expressed differently, and extending his hand, he asks her to help him apply the medicine. As Natalie gently tends to his wound, the Earl watches in dismay, his plan to pair her with Illy collapsing before his eyes. Charles glances at the old man with a flicker of a smile, a rare sight that leaves Illy utterly shocked. The Duke dismisses it as happiness over finishing his work, but Natalie confirms she saw it too, making him seem more human and relatable in her eyes. Back at their mansion, Fiona shatters a vase in a fit of rage over Ryan's blackmail. Her mother rushes to calm her, reminding her not to let the Duke discover their plans, and promises she has a new, better idea. Natalie later instructs her maid to spread a rumor that Ryan and Fiona are having a private tryst, ensuring it reaches her father's ears. Her goal is simple and cold. Fiona must marry Ryan, forcing her and her mother to slowly savor the same pain Natalie endured in her past life. The plan works perfectly. At dinner, the Earl announces he sent a letter to discuss Fiona's marriage to Ryan, leaving Fiona stunned. She tries to lie, claiming Ryan was seeking her advice on how to court Natalie, but Natalie plays innocent, fanning the flames of her sister's silent, seething hatred. The scheme unravels further when the Earl reveals Ryan simply apologized for ruining Fiona's reputation, confirming he betrayed them for the dowry. A smug smile graces Natalie's lips. Ryan didn't let her down. Fiona desperately pleads with her mother, refusing to have her life ruined by marrying Ryan. Her mother, ever the strategist, feigns concern and convinces the Earl to postpone the wedding due to Fiona's poor health, a lie Fiona quickly plays along with. Natalie watches their pathetic attempt to buy time, amused and ready for their next move. The following day, Natalie decides to bake snacks for the Duke's household as a thank you, only to find the Duke himself in the kitchen, looking exhausted from a night of work. She invites him to help, an offer he considers just as Fiona enters and tries to take over. The Duke coldly dismisses Fiona, stating that making snacks seems interesting and that she should leave if she dislikes the kitchen. Natalie is stunned by his sudden proactive stance, but quickly recovers, instructing him on how to prepare the cream while inwardly celebrating a victory she won without even lifting a finger. Fiona storms away in a rage. After their collaboration, Natalie proudly presents the finished dessert, offering him the first piece. The sight triggers a forgotten memory, a young girl offering him a snack at a graveyard after his mother's death. Snapping back to the present, he pushes her hand away, declaring coldly that he hates snacks, leaving Natalie utterly confused. The tone of his voice is so familiar, jogging her memory of the sad little boy she met at her mother's grave, a boy she tried to comfort with her mother's dessert. She remembers how he stood before a tombstone bearing the image of a woman who looked so much like him, and how she felt compelled to comfort him by forcing a snack into his mouth. He had recoiled then too, claiming he hated dessert even as he swallowed it. For a year they had been each other's secret solace, but they lost touch and never even learned each other's names. Lost in thought, Natalie sighs, and the Duke asks her why. He then amends his earlier statement, admitting that while he dislikes snacks, hers looks good. Elated, she prepares a box for him to take home and stops him before he leaves, pointing out a speck of flour on his nose. She gently wipes it away, a simple touch that feels surprisingly intimate. As he walks off, the Duke thinks to himself that the dessert looks just like the one that girl used to make. Meanwhile, Fiona's mother plots anew, deciding their best weapon against Natalie is to find the woman who holds the Duke's heart. 2 days later, the Duke returns to thank her for the snacks, a visit Natalie fears will be his last. But their farewell is interrupted by an urgent summons from the king. A riot has broken out, and the Duke must leave for battle immediately. He turns to Natalie, his eyes serious, and tells her he's leaving. Touched that he was reporting to her, she smiles warmly and wishes for his safe return, feeling her efforts have finally paid off. Her brief moment of peace is shattered when her father rushes in, his face etched with worry. He informs her she's been summoned by the king because Princess Arya wants to cause trouble for her. A sudden summons to the palace fills Natalie with a cold dread. She knows this is the work of Her Highness Arya. Her father, Duke Carlylus, insisted on accompanying her out of concern, and the king's easy agreement provides a fleeting moment of relief. But that peace shatters the second they step into the throne room. The king, Sir Calirus, gets straight to the point, addressing Natalie directly and commenting on her supposed proficiency in many languages, confirming her suspicion that Arya is pulling the strings. He then drops his bombshell. She is to translate a top-secret document from the intelligence department, and she has only 3 days to do it. Her father pales, immediately protesting that Natalie is merely self-taught and unqualified for such a grave task, but the king dismisses his concerns with a chilling question about his loyalty. Duke Carlylus, trapped, carefully navigates his response, reminding the king that forcing an impossible task upon his daughter might tarnish the royal family's generous reputation. The king concedes, promising Natalie won't be punished if she fails, a small mercy that forces her to accept the mission. As they depart, Princess Arya emerges from the shadows, smirking as she thanks her father for agreeing to her little test, vowing that the document is a carefully prepared surprise for Natalie. Back in her study, Natalie pores over the inscrutable text for hours, only able to identify it as a handwritten religious letter before giving up in frustration. Deciding to switch tactics, she summons the cook, Judy, to inquire about the spy in her household. Judy confirms her suspicions. A cook named Hannah was caught eavesdropping on her conversation with Duke Bennox before rushing straight to Natalie's stepmother, the Duchess. What was said remains a mystery, but Natalie decides against a direct confrontation, preferring to handle the traitor herself. Elsewhere, Duke Bennox is riding from the capital when he receives the shocking news of Natalie's summons. Panic seizes him, and he immediately orders his men to turn back, ignoring warnings that it could be seen as disloyalty. He is tormented by the thought that his enemy's viciousness is now endangering innocent people like Natalie. Just as he wheels his horse around, a raven messenger arrives from the capital. Bearing a note that stops him in his tracks, Natalie and her father have left the palace unharmed. A wave of relief washes over him, but he knows the threat is far from over. He spurs his horse onward, determined to finish his mission in Roger County and return to her side as quickly as possible. At a bustling tea party, Natalie's stepmother is scheming when Natalie herself makes a grand and unexpected entrance. While some ladies whisper about her sudden recovery from her supposed illness, Natalie approaches her stepmother, feigning distress. With tears in her eyes, she loudly accuses the cook, Hannah, of serving her a pie made from rotten apples and worms. The crowd gasps in disgust, and Natalie presses her advantage, demanding the cook be fired immediately to prove her stepmother's commitment to justice. Cornered by public opinion, the Duchess has no choice but to agree, inwardly seething that her loyal spy has been outmaneuvered. As a weeping Hannah is dismissed, Natalie intercepts her, offering her a choice: face ruin or confess everything in exchange for a new position at her grandmother's estate. Broken, Hannah admits to being the stepmother's spy and reveals a crucial piece of information. Duke Benox had muttered to himself that Natalie's dessert reminded him of something that girl used to make. Hannah confirms this girl is Master the woman the Duke secretly loves, and that the stepmother now plans to find her and use her against Natalie. While her long-term goal is to uncover this rival, Natalie's immediate priority is the king's impossible task. She and her maid spend the next 2 days searching the book market for clues, where she has a chance encounter with Master himself. She proposes a deal. She'll help him find his books if he tells her about the Duke's secret love. Illy admits he knows almost nothing, as his uncle guards the memory so fiercely that even family is kept in the dark. Though the deal fails, Illy agrees to help her anyway, and in the process, she finds a book about St. Paul's Church in Roger County. The book reveals the church choir used a unique form of rioting before the building mysteriously burned down, leaving only ruins. The perfect clue to deciphering the document. Energized by the lead, Natalie immediately gets permission to travel to Roger County, hoping to see the Duke on his mission there. At that very moment, the Duke's forces are preparing for their final assault on a group of rebels who are planning to rally at the ruins of St. Paul's Church. As he gives the order to move out, a voice calls his name. He turns, stunned, to see Natalie standing there in a red cloak. Overcome with emotion and relief, she rushes forward and throws herself into his arms, holding him tightly as he whispers that he's so glad she's safe. Natalie hastily apologizes to Lord Benox, explaining that a terrifying dream of him being injured compelled her to rush to his side, and she's now relieved to see him unharmed. Benox is stunned, questioning if she truly came all this way just for a dream, while his men watch from a distance, whispering about how Miss Natalie's affection might finally capture the Duke's heart, noting his uncharacteristically tolerant demeanor. When one of his subordinates reminds him of their mission, a sharp glance from Benox sends them scrambling to get the job done. He turns to Natalie, intending to push her away and explain the urgency of his mission. But she preempts him, apologizing and promising to wait for his return. As he walks away, she calls out, telling him to be safe and that she will pray for his return until the very end. The moment he's out of sight, her facade drops and she lets out a sigh of relief, silently congratulating herself on her performance and noting that at least he was too tired from lack of sleep to criticize her acting this time. With her ruse complete, she immediately orders her attendants to the ruins of St. Paul's Church, brushing off their confusion by claiming she'll finish her work there and return to wait for the Duke, all the while thinking how she can now investigate the document matter while Benox is occupied, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Arriving at the hauntingly beautiful ruins, she marvels at its faded splendor before ordering her guards to remain outside while she investigates alone, reasoning it's better for searching and they can protect her from there. Lantern in hand, she steps into the collapsed church, knowing it will be difficult to find anything in the rubble. As she ventures deeper, she discovers a relatively well-preserved prayer room, a flicker of hope igniting within her that she might find a clue. But as she kneels to inspect something on the floor, a hand clamps over her mouth from the shadows, her lantern crashing to the ground. A hooded figure warns her not to scream, reminding her that her guards are outside. Natalie's mind races. She didn't hear him approach, but she deduces he doesn't intend to kill her or he would have done so already, forcing herself to remain calm. The man explains he only grabbed her to prevent a scream as he doesn't want to be seen. Realizing his target isn't her, Natalie seizes the opportunity, asking if he can decipher some words for her in exchange for a reward. He scoffs at the offer of payment, revealing that he can help because they are old acquaintances. He lowers his hood and Natalie gasps, recognizing the white-haired man instantly. Her mind reeling at the impossibility of his appearance. A memory floods her senses 10 years ago on a snowy day. Her father comforted a weeping young Natalie by telling her that her deceased mother was watching from heaven. Vowing not to make her mother sad, she spotted a boy shivering in the cold outside. Driven by her mother's generous spirit, she offered the boy cookies, which he accepted with a quiet thanks, giving her coins in return and blessing her with the goddess of light's protection. Back in the present, the man's face perfectly matches her memory, yet he hasn't aged a day. As if reading her thoughts, he explains his long life is a gift from the goddess and then shocks her by asking if she has been reborn. Her stunned silence is all the confirmation he needs, and he realizes the legendary heart fragment of the goddess must be real and the source of her second life. He eagerly asks about the fragment and her rebirth, but Natalie calmly states it has vanished and she feels nothing special. Disappointed, he speculates it has merged with her and declares he will stay by her side to observe. Internally panicking at the complication, Natalie reluctantly agrees when he promises to stay hidden and help her with the texts. He begins translating the engravings, and she decides to test him, pulling out a rubbing of a document she'd made. He takes one look and his face darkens. He identifies it as a confidential document leaked from the royal court. Just then, chaos erupts outside as Benox's men capture several rebels, though their leader escapes towards the church ruins. Benox gives the order to surround the area. Inside, the white-haired man confirms he heard rumors of the leak and shows her a scrambled piece he acquired, proving it's the same document. The horrifying truth crashes down on Natalie. She was set up. Taking the document was a trap laid by Arya, designed to have her executed for treason and ruin her family. The man snaps her out of her dark thoughts just as she hears approaching footsteps. He tells her to hide and vanishes into the shadows. Natalie composes herself and steps out to find Duke Benox. She feigns surprise, but he urgently tells her to come to him, away from where she's standing. Before she can react, he screams at her not to move. But it's too late. The rebel leader grabs her, a dagger pressed against her throat. Benox roars her name, ice magic crackling in his hands as he demands her release. The rebel leader smirks, threatening to kill them both unless the Duke stands down. Consumed by rage and fear, Benox concedes, dispersing his magic and ordering his men to let the rebel pass. As the rebel drags Natalie away, he taunts Benox about his devotion. But Natalie sees her chance. She stomps on his foot with all her might, throwing him off balance. Just as a shard of ice from Benox slices past, incapacitating the man, Natalie stumbles back into Benox's arms, and he holds her tight, frantically asking if she's hurt. Charles holds Natalie tightly, his voice laced with fury as he demands to know why she came out at night instead of waiting at the station. His red eyes burn with a mixture of anger and fear as he tells her that if the traitor had truly wanted her dead, she would be nothing but a corpse now. Stunned by his rage, Natalie can only stammer an apology, explaining that she had simply come to pray for his safety and swift victory against the rebels. Her earnest plea melts his anger away, and with a deep sigh, he pulls her into a firm embrace. Deciding they must return, he effortlessly sweeps her into his arms, leaving his subordinates gaping in shock. To save face, Charles coolly announces that Miss Natalie was so frightened by Ryan Constantine that she couldn't walk, and carrying her is the only way to ensure she rests. Natalie, playing along perfectly, weakly agrees that she was terrified and lucky the Duke was there to catch her. As he carries her through the moonlit forest, he orders her to close her eyes and rest. But her mind is a raging storm. She agonizes over the truth, knowing she was tricked by Arya with those confidential documents. A desperate internal debate rages. Should she tell him? He would protect her, she knows, but at what cost? This accusation is so severe that it could drag him down with her, leaving them both punished and ruined. Charles senses her turmoil and gently asks what's wrong. She deflects, claiming she feels guilty for the rebels' near escape. But Charles has his own suspicions, revealing that after the third seemingly random attack, he knew something was amiss and had launched his own investigation. He found clues implicating Arya, who struck down innocent girls without mercy, but the king's blind affection for his daughter made justice seem impossible. Hearing the immense guilt in his voice, Natalie realizes the weight he carries for the lives he couldn't save. She looks at him with renewed determination, telling him she trusts he will avenge them. Softening, he assures her that her safety is his greatest priority and she shouldn't feel any remorse. She promises to protect herself, a vow that seems to settle something within him. She decides to let him have one night of peace, knowing he is already exhausted from battle. But their respite is shattered the next morning when a subordinate bursts in with terrible news. His Majesty's men have come to arrest Natalie for leaking state secrets. Charles is frozen in shock. As Natalie is surrounded by guards, ready to be transported to the capital, she fears Arya will have her killed on the journey, silencing her forever. But just then, Charles strides forward, declaring his intent to report on the rebellion and accompany their party. The captain of the guards voices concern over Charles's tired team, but Charles waves it off, his decision absolute. Watching him ride protectively beside her carriage puts Natalie at ease. But she knows survival requires more than just a safe journey. She must prove her innocence. When they finally arrive at the palace, the guards move to take her to the dungeon, but she cries out his name in panic. Charles immediately intervenes, forbidding them from taking her and vowing not to leave her side until she sees the king. The guard, caught between the Duke's command and Princess Arya's orders, decides to report the situation to the king. Inside, the guard relays Charles's defiant stance, infuriating the king, who bellows that he's being blackmailed. Arya, however, smiles with venomous delight, convincing her father to let them in so she can witness Charles's downfall. With the stage set, Charles and Natalie are summoned. The king wastes no time, accusing Natalie of leaking a document only she had access to. To Charles's horror, Natalie calmly confesses, admitting she leaked the document intentionally. He grabs her frantic, demanding to know what she's saying. But she maintains her composure. She declares she did it for the good of the empire because the document was a fake, and she used it as bait to uncover the real traitors. Arya laughs mockingly, telling Natalie not to bother with such pathetic excuses. The king, enraged, orders her to be dragged to the gallows. Charles pleads for him to wait, arguing the document's authenticity is paramount, but Arya dismisses it as stalling. The king grants Natalie one final chance to explain herself. Natalie then recounts the events of 2 nights prior. As she anticipated her arrest, a mysterious white-haired man appeared, offering a solution. He revealed the contents of the document, a fabricated letter about nobles loyal to the Church of Light plotting to restore their religion. Natalie was stunned by the gravity of the information. The man then told her the most crucial detail: the document was fake. He knew because, as a follower of the goddess of light, he was certain the nobles listed were not believers. He explained it was a trap by a neighboring country to sow discord within the empire. All she had to do, he said with a confident smile, was explain this to the emperor, transforming her crime into a heroic act. Natalie agrees to the perilous plan, understanding they can't simply reveal their source without them being dismissed as a charlatan. Their only option is a dangerous gambit: to guide the emperor himself to doubt and verify the truth, a path where her very survival hangs in the balance. Before the throne, the king scoffs at her story, summarizing it with disdain. She claims the list of rebels was fake news from a neighboring country to cause unrest, yet she has no proof to back it up. He sees it as nothing but a desperate attempt to stall for time, a sentiment echoed by a smirking Arya. Natalie feels a surge of despair, realizing Arya is constantly confusing the king, robbing her of any chance to even be heard. But just as her hope dwindles, Charles steps forward, declaring the matter is not entirely without evidence. He recounts that while suppressing the rebellion in Rock County, he discovered letters between the captured rebels and other nobles, which he now realizes was part of the foreign plot to alienate the country's own people. He announces he has captured some prisoners alive and can interrogate them overnight to uncover the truth. A flicker of hope ignites within Natalie. If he investigates, she could be saved. However, Arya immediately objects, whining to the king that Natalie is just trying to confuse Charles and that he'll be too soft-hearted to see the truth. The king agrees, forbidding Charles from getting involved in the matter. Charles protests, arguing that these traitors are tough to break and he's the only one for the job, his gaze meeting Natalie's with unspoken resolve. Their standoff is interrupted by the arrival of the elegant Archduke Angelica. Greeting the king, she explains she overheard the situation and offers a solution, suggesting that since the case involves multiple noble houses, it requires a neutral party. She proposes herself as the interrogator, a noble person who cares only for the interests of the empire, a suggestion the king readily accepts. As Natalie is led away, Charles walks past, and Angelica stops him, stating that Countess Carlyle must remain in her cell until the interrogation is complete. Charles coldly assures her he will personally see to Duke Carlyle's care, promising there will be no surprises before he departs. Natalie quietly thanks him as he leaves. She then turns to Angelica, expressing her sincere gratitude, admitting that with anyone else in charge, she would have no hope of clearing her name. Angelica smiles slyly, confessing she isn't doing this to protect Natalie, but leans in to whisper a secret: she is doing it to save Charles. Confused by the cryptic statement, Natalie is led away by the Archduke. As they walk, Angelica discreetly writes 2 words on Natalie's palm: prison break. Natalie's mind reels with the implications. Duke Benox is planning to break her out. Angelica explains that Charles rushed to the palace the moment he heard she was summoned, not because he feared Arya would hurt just anyone, but because he feared Arya would hurt her asterisk. She asks if Natalie is moved by this devotion, but Natalie remains silent. Angelica smiles, seeing through her facade, and plainly states that she likes Natalie for being so smart. Flustered, Natalie tries to deflect, claiming she has always admired Duke Benox and was simply happy to receive his favor. Angelica leads her to the jail cell, promising they'll talk later. Alone in the cold stone room, Natalie reflects on her twisted scheme. Her initial confession was an accident, but everything after was a deliberate plot to capture Charles's heart and use him as a weapon in her revenge against Arya. The strategy is working perfectly, so why does she feel this gnawing guilt instead of happiness? Trying to push the confusing thoughts away, she resolves to sleep. She's jolted awake by a strange sound, and her eyes fly open to see a cloaked assassin lunging at her with a dagger. She screams for help, her voice filled with terror. But just as the blade descends, a sword flashes out of the darkness, parrying the blow. It's Charles, standing over her like a guardian shadow. He tells her not to be afraid, that he is there, before swiftly disarming the attacker with brutal efficiency. The failed killer attempts to flee, but Charles, his eyes burning with cold rage, gives chase and cuts him down. He rushes back to Natalie's side, his voice laced with concern as he asks if she's hurt. She's unharmed but shaken, questioning how he was here. He explains that he anticipated Arya and Angelica wouldn't give up so easily and was hiding nearby to protect her. Now with the killer captured alive, he hopes to force Arya's hand. But their prisoner just laughs manically, vowing to die before he ever speaks. He pulls a hidden dagger and plunges it toward his own heart. As Natalie screams in horror, Charles's expression turns to ice. With a flick of his wrist, he unleashes a blast of cold magic, freezing the assassin's hand and shattering the weapon, coldly stating that trying to commit suicide under his nose is a fool's dream. He then delivers a brutal punishment, ensuring the man lives to be questioned. Natalie watches in awe, seeing the true, terrifying power of the Empire's god of war for the first time, realizing this man would raid the execution grounds for her. When his men arrive, he orders them to take the killer to Angelica. Turning back to Natalie, he tells her to rest, promising to guard her from outside. Overwhelmed and terrified, she clutches his sleeve, begging him to stay, admitting she doesn't want to be alone. He pauses, surprised by her vulnerability, but agrees, thinking that for all her cunning, she is still a delicate girl, and he can never refuse her. He sits beside her bed as she drifts off into what he thinks is sleep. He watches her peaceful face, wishing her no nightmares, and then notices the blood on his gloves, wiping them clean so as not to disturb her. Before whispering goodnight, but Natalie is awake, her mind racing. She was only pretending to sleep, and she feels him comforting her, finally understanding the root of her guilt. She has deceived his genuine feelings, and she can't give him the same response. She feels trapped, knowing she shouldn't betray someone so sincere, but seeing no other path forward. A new question torments her. Should she continue pretending, or can she try to genuinely like him, hoping that if she can, it might not be a lie after all? 2 days later, Angelica's aide reports to Charles that the interrogation is complete. The mastermind was Arya, just as they expected. The king's punishment was a pathetic 2 weeks of grounding. Charles scoffs, unsurprised by his brother's leniency. Angelica notes their primary goal of rescuing Natalie was achieved, and the incident has made the king feel guilty, making her acquittal likely. Charles formally thanks her for her help with Natalie. This prompts a teasing question from Angelica: who is Natalie to him? Without hesitation, Charles declares that she will soon officially be his fiancée. Angelica wonders if he's considered that Natalie might refuse, but he is unshakably confident that she won't. Angelica's smile sharpens as she poses one final, piercing question: does he even care whether Natalie likes him or not? For Duke Charles Benox, whether Natalie likes him or not is utterly irrelevant. He declares to himself that since she was targeted because of him, it is his sworn duty to protect her. His mind drifts to other pressures, like the doctor's reports and his father's supposed illness, recalling the old man's dramatic plea for him to marry so he could die in peace. Charles scoffs at the memory, knowing his father is perfectly healthy, a fact proven when the old duke flew into a rage, calling him a bastard for pointing it out. Yet the thought lingers, and Charles concludes that Natalie would make a perfect duchess, and marrying her would finally fulfill his duty as heir. A red-haired woman tells him his logic is sound, but then sharply criticizes him for never explaining himself to anyone, her included. As she stands, challenging him, an attendant rushes in with urgent news. The captured rebels have confessed everything. In a vision of the interrogation, the leader admits they were just mercenaries hired to frame a group of nobles. And in that moment, Charles realizes with a jolt that Natalie was telling the truth all along. He informs the Grand Duchess he must report to His Majesty and instructs her to accompany Natalie in jail to await the king's final judgment. Meanwhile, in her cell, Natalie feels a wave of relief, certain that with the new evidence, both she and Duke Benox can finally be at ease. But a glance at the Duke reveals a shocking sight. The ever-composed man is visibly nervous, and a mischievous smile plays on Natalie's lips as she savors the idea of seeing the iceberg man flustered. Charles senses her gaze and turns, a question in his eyes. While she sweetly asks if anything is wrong, he feels a strange prickle on his neck and dismisses it as an illusion just as the Grand Duchess is announced. Charles formally tells Natalie she has been acquitted, and though she thanks him, he coldly states he only did it to protect the royal family's reputation. As a reward, she is presented with royal cups from the king. Later, holding the gift, Natalie confronts Charles, suggesting the reward is merely hush money to cover for Arya's mistakes. But she has a more pressing question, getting closer to ask how he knew the documents were fake, her mind racing back to the mysterious man who visited her that night. Charles admits he saw it all himself, flashing back to that evening when he couldn't sleep, worried sick about her. He'd spotted a figure sneaking towards her balcony, instantly assuming it was a traitor, and was baffled to hear them discuss capital crimes so casually. A dark thought had crossed his mind, that he could frame the man as a traitor, making it impossible to clear his name, but he quickly regained his composure. deciding instead to wait for Natalie's explanation. Back in the present, she reveals the man was simply her guard reporting on the documents. Charles immediately grows suspicious, suggesting the man is a spy. But Natalie fiercely guarantees he isn't. The Duke presses her, asking what relationship gives her such confidence. And a spark of realization hits Natalie as she leans in and coyly asks if he's jealous. A deep blush floods Charles's face as he stammers denials, telling her she's noisy. Much to Natalie's inner delight. Elsewhere, a blonde man named Ryan pays a hooded woman, reminding her to stay quiet. But she demands more money, claiming she found the information he and his daughter desire most. She confirms she's located the girl the Duke of Benox has been searching for, a secret pried from an old gravekeeper with a faulty memory. Ryan demands the name, and the woman reveals with shock that the girl is someone they all know, Natalie. As Natalie is finally released, her father rushes to embrace her, thanking the Duke profusely for his help. But their reunion is interrupted by a woman named Fiona, who runs towards them with a stunning declaration for Charles. She is the girl he's been looking for all these years. Charles remains skeptical, demanding proof. As Natalie internally scoffs at the impossible coincidence, Fiona confidently offers him a shortbread she baked, insisting the taste will be the same as the one they shared in their childhood. They sit and Natalie watches with bated breath as Charles takes a bite, his eyes widening in what looks like genuine recognition. Seeing his expression, Natalie's heart sinks in panic. Fiona seizes the moment, launching into a fabricated story about her father's death to explain her disappearance. But as she leans on him for sympathy, Charles coldly pushes her away, telling her to respect herself. He states that even if she is the girl, her behavior is inappropriate and he isn't fully convinced. A wave of relief washes over Natalie, but just as Fiona vows to prove her identity, Natalie feels a sudden dizzy spell and stumbles. Instantly, Charles catches her, his concern overriding everything else as he scoops her into his arms to take her to her room. Completely ignoring Fiona's protests, Fiona is left seething, her plan completely derailed. Later, in the safety of her room, Natalie asks Charles why he played along with her act. He coolly replies that it gave him a convenient excuse to escape the tedious situation. She then presses him, asking if he'd regret his actions if Fiona turned out to be the real girl. In a swift motion, Charles pins her to the bed, his voice low as he tells her there's something far more important to confirm first. Leaning in close, his gaze intense, he demands to know who is hiding in her room. A sudden presence in the room puts Natalie on high alert, her eyes scanning the empty space as she wonders where the person is hiding. Her mind races with terrifying possibilities. Could it be a killer sent by her cruel stepmother, or perhaps the work of Her Highness Arya? But Duke Benox is by her side in an instant, his voice a low comfort as he tells her not to be afraid. He sensed no murderous intent. Still, he questions who would dare enter a lady's bedroom without permission. Hidden behind the curtains, a white-haired man named Banai panics, realizing he ran into Duke Benox just as he arrived to see Natalie, a terrible timing that could expose his identity. The Duke's eyes narrow as he senses the intruder, raw magical energy crackling in his hand, as he warns the person to come out or face his wrath. With no other choice, Banai steps out from his hiding place, offering a gentle greeting. The Duke immediately recognizes him as the man from Roger County, demanding to know why a guard would hide just to see his master. Natalie, flustered, quickly steps in, claiming it was her request to keep his presence a secret from her family. Banai, ever the quick thinker, plays along, stating he's merely there to report on an investigation she tasked him with. The Duke's gaze is sharp and dismissive, he sees right through their clumsy cover-up. While Natalie tries to laugh it off, the Duke issues a stern warning to Banai, declaring this the last time he will enter her room alone and that he'll be sending someone to protect Natalie in secret. He threatens a full investigation into Banai's past unless his arrangements are followed, prompting a hasty agreement from the white-haired man. As Banai makes a swift exit, Natalie realizes the Duke already knew about their first meeting but chose not to investigate, preferring an explanation from her directly. Once they are alone, the Duke turns to her, his voice low as he asks for Banai's true identity. Natalie apologizes, explaining she made a promise not to reveal his information but assures him that Banai is not a bad person. The Duke accepts this for now but commands her never to be alone with him again. Confused, Natalie questions his authority over her social life, thinking their relationship doesn't warrant such interference. His response shatters her expectations. He has already informed his father that he wants her to be the mistress of the Benox house. Stunned, Natalie reminds him of his long search for his childhood sweetheart, but he confirms his proposal is connected to that very girl. He reveals that he knows Fiona has been claiming to be her, but the story doesn't add up. He explains that he never actually liked desserts, A girl gave them to him once as a child, leading to a misunderstanding. He admits he deliberately gave his father wrong information to stop the search because he couldn't even remember the girl's face and believed it was safer for her to remain anonymous. He then leans in, his eyes locking onto hers, accusingly asking why she looks so guilty since she was the one who provoked him, and now he finds himself unable to get rid of her. Natalie defensively claims her expression is natural, a response he finds unreasonably cute. Pushing the topic, she asks what he intends to do about Fiona's claim. He states with cold certainty that it is not her, explaining that the girl from his past said her mother became a star, while Fiona's mother is very much alive. When Natalie asks why he didn't expose the lie, he reveals a cunning plan. He wanted to see what Fiona hoped to gain, a charade that also conveniently draws attention away from Princess Aria. Natalie is impressed by his ruthlessness, and he adds that Fiona must pay the price for attempting to deceive the Duke's mansion. He believes her motive was simple to get close to him. Despite his bad reputation, the temptation of becoming the Duchess was too strong, especially since Fiona believed the girl was important to him. He then sinks to one knee, looking up at her with an intense gaze, and asks if she wants to be the mistress of his mansion. After a heart-stopping pause, Natalie admits that she would like to. Satisfied, the Duke promises to make the arrangements and protect her from Aria's schemes, a vow she accepts with a blush and newfound trust. As he leaves, he advises her to ignore any rumors and come to him for the truth. Alone, Natalie reflects that becoming the mistress is not just about protection, it's about seizing power for herself. Meanwhile, at the Carlisle house, a flood of extravagant gifts from Duke Bennox arrive for Fiona. Fiona and her mother are euphoric, with her mother declaring this proves the Duke believes she is the one he's been looking for. Their celebration is interrupted by Natalie's arrival. Fiona gloats, boasting about the gifts and how happy the Duke has made her. Feigning envy, Natalie decides to play along with the charade. When Fiona smugly offers her any gift she wants, Natalie cheekily asks if she can have the Duke's gift, shocking Fiona into silence. Their mother quickly intervenes, scolding Fiona and offering Natalie a gift from herself instead. She then ushers Natalie away to see her father, privately scheming to use the Duke's interest in Fiona to cancel her engagement to a man named Ryan. In the Earl's study, the stepmother paints Ryan as a villain, claiming he's a terrible person and the marriage must be stopped to save Fiona's future. The Earl, horrified, agrees. The stepmother then reveals the news about Duke Bennox's gifts, presenting it as proof that Fiona has a much better suitor. The Earl is stunned, his concern immediately shifting to Natalie. Natalie calmly reassures him that she is fine and excuses herself to rest. As she walks away, she plans to speak with her father later, unaware of the malicious smirk on Fiona's face, who savors the thought of her sister's suffering and vows to keep her crushed under her heel forever. The clang of steel echoes as Duke Charles Bennox trains relentlessly, his instructor's critiques of too slow and faster barely registering. With a flash of his blade, he disarms his opponent, sending the sword clattering across the floor, before coldly ordering the man to run 10 laps. His mind, however, is elsewhere. A maid reports that the gift was delivered to Duke Carlisle's palace as instructed, prompting Charles to immediately ask about Miss Natalie's well-being. The maid informs him they never saw Miss Natalie, a reply that clearly disappoints him. He dismisses her, and a moment later, a cloaked subordinate appears, addressing him as master. The spy confirms Natalie never left the house today, but shares a crucial detail. When she saw the many presents, she remarked that she had never received so many and envied her sister, Fiona. This news strikes a chord with Charles, who realizes with a pang of guilt that he has never given Natalie a single thing himself and vows to make it up to her. His thoughts are interrupted by his nephew, who appears suddenly, and questions why his uncle is so focused on Fiona, the one he's supposedly been looking for. He tells Charles he heard about the many gifts and asks if he doesn't want Natalie to be the mistress of the Duke's palace, insisting that Miss Natalie likes him so much. He passionately pleads with his uncle to cherish her, but Charles is unmoved, patting him on the shoulder and telling him to mind his own business as he has his own plans. As Charles walks away, his nephew calls out that he's only saying this for his own good and that he'll regret it if he doesn't cherish someone like Miss Natalie. Later, at a lavish banquet, a group of noblewomen surrounds Natalie's sister, Fiona, fawning over her and gossiping about how romantic it is that Duke Bennox has been waiting for her for so many years. They eagerly ask if he is preparing for an engagement, which makes Fiona blush coyly. With a mischievous glint in her eye, Fiona deflects, suggesting that the person he's going to be engaged to might not be her, but her sister, who has always been fond of the Duke. She then excuses herself to go talk to her. She finds Natalie standing alone and mockingly asks why her sister is all by herself without any companions. The other ladies soon gather, their whispers turning to open derision as they question how Natalie could possibly be chosen over Fiona. One of them accuses Natalie of getting the Duke's attention by pestering him, but Natalie calmly turns the tables, pointing out that the young lady must like the Duke herself, which is why she dislikes Natalie so much. The accusation leaves the woman flustered and sputtering denials. Another lady diffuses the tension by saying it's normal for any noble lady to like the popular Duke Benox, but everyone knows his heart has belonged to Fiona for years. Smirking, Fiona watches Natalie, thinking how stupid her sister is. Natalie, tired of the games, excuses herself to get some fresh air. Just then, a hush falls over the room as the glamorous Princess Aria makes her grand entrance. Annoyed at encountering the crazy woman again, Natalie decides it's safest to stick close to Fiona. Fiona sees this and launches into a new attack, dripping sarcasm as she remarks on her sister's lack of experience at parties. When Natalie simply ignores her, Fiona decides to escalate, complimenting Natalie's necklace before pointing to her own, far more extravagant one. She proudly declares it was a gift from Duke Benox, a rare piece he gave to her because he only cares about her. As the other ladies gasp in admiration, Fiona adds that he gave her the entire set, a clear sign of his deep affection, which leaves Natalie in a low mood. From afar, Princess Aria watches with a vicious smirk, thinking Natalie is a pathetic loser who could never be a worthy opponent. Just then, an attendant announces the arrival of Duke Benox and the Grand Duchess Angelilla. The ladies immediately encourage Fiona to greet the Duke, certain he'll want to see her. Fiona approaches him with a confident smile, but Charles barely spares her a glance, giving a curt nod before stating he has something else to do and walking away, leaving her utterly humiliated. The Grand Duchess watches the exchange with a hidden, knowing smile. Flustered, Fiona immediately asks where Natalie is, and a maid informs her that Natalie asked her to say she was leaving first. Fiona smirks, convinced her sister ran away because she couldn't stand the Duke's blatant disregard for her. Meanwhile, in the back garden, Natalie wonders why she was summoned here, only to stumble upon a massive pile of treasure chests overflowing with jewels and gold. Charles appears from the shadows, revealing it is all a gift for her. He apologizes, explaining that the situation is special and this was the only opportunity he had to give it to her. Natalie is completely stunned, asking why he would give her a gift at a time like this. He simply states that he wants her to be happy, that's all. Overwhelmed, Natalie thanks him, a genuine happy smile gracing her face. Charles seems to flush, pleased that she is happy. He shyly admits he picked the gifts himself and doesn't know if they suit her taste, adding that he knows his personality isn't very likable and he's not good with sweet words, but he promises to try his best to understand her and become a qualified husband. His earnest confession leaves Natalie speechless, and he mistakes her silence for displeasure, anxiously asking if she doesn't like it. She finally responds, saying it's just a bit strange that her heart is beating fast. Internally, she wants to confess that she likes him, but she stops herself, remembering that all her past confessions were lies. Instead, she looks at him and shyly asks him to hold her hand. He agrees, taking her hand and marveling at how small it feels, completely wrapped within his own. He leads her to the presents, and she laughs, asking if he was afraid she didn't have money to spend when she sees gold bars among the jewels. He explains that when he prepares a gift, he wants to put everything in it, and then directs her to one last box. Inside, she finds a beautiful custom-made skirt. Charles reveals it's from the same designer as the suit she's currently wearing, and Natalie realizes with a shock that he sent her the outfit for the banquet, which she had mistakenly thought was from her father. The final piece clicks into place, and she asks if he arranged the entire banquet just for an opportunity to give her a gift. He confirms it, admitting he asked the Grand Duchess to host it under the flimsy pretext of celebrating the anniversary of her adopting a pet. Deeply moved, Natalie thanks him again, telling him it's truly beautiful. Back inside, the Grand Duchess advises a sullen Princess Aria to be more sensible and stop worrying her father. Once the Duchess departs, Aria furiously wonders where Duke Benox is, and her maid reports he was seen walking toward the courtyard alone. A cold, determined look fills Aria's eyes as she demands to be taken there at once. Natalie thanks Charles profusely for the gift, her heart fluttering as she tells him how much she loves it. But Charles cuts through the pleasantries with a quiet, intense question, what about him? He can't believe he's asking something so crazy, but the words are out. Natalie is stunned, realizing he's asking if she likes him. A memory of her aunt's advice flashes through her mind, telling her to be bold with her feelings. Gathering her courage, Charles presses on, asking if she likes him as much as his gifts, reminding her that she used to say it all the time. He wonders if she's tired of him now. Flustered and panicking, Natalie knows she liked him before, but the words won't come out now, causing her to stagger back in a daze. Charles catches her instantly, his arms wrapping around her as he asks if she's all right. She apologizes, her face flushed red, but he holds her close, telling her not to move. She's shocked by how proactive he is, feeling like he's a different person, while he internally notes how cute she is when she's well-behaved. He then drops a bombshell, announcing his plan to propose to her at the royal banquet in 10 days. He assures her he will prepare everything and handle her father, promising their engagement will be official before the king and all the nobles. Natalie voices a slight concern about her father, who has never liked Charles, but he reassures her that he will find a way to inform him. She agrees, tired of living in fear and wanting to settle things as soon as possible. Their tender moment is shattered by a harsh voice demanding they move, calling them dogs. It's Princess Arya, her face twisted with rage at the sight of them. A servant politely blocks her path, explaining that his master has forbidden anyone from entering the lakeside courtyard. Arya scoffs at a mere servant daring to stand in her way, and orders her maid to move him. The maid obeys, kicking the man to the ground with brutal force. As the guards draw their swords, Arya smirks, daring them to act against her. She warns Natalie that if she wants to live a worthless life, she needs to know her place, otherwise she'll be the one to suffer. She cruelly steps on the fallen servant's hand, sneering about the new rule she'd never heard of. She clenches her fist, determined to find out if Charles is really engaged to this lowly woman. Seeing them together from a distance confirms her fears, and a furious scream builds in her throat as she vows not to forgive Natalie for seducing Charles. Just as she's about to erupt, a cold voice asks Arya about her upbringing. Arya freezes, shocked to see her aunt standing there. The aunt chastises her, reminding her that she is a princess supported by the people and must not bring discredit to her identity. She orders Arya to return to the palace and confine herself for 3 days, hoping this will be the last of her unprincess-like behavior. Defeated, Arya pleads to speak with Charles, but her aunt dismisses her, stating she can have a guard escort her back. Arya has no choice but to retreat. After she's gone, the Aunt Natalie remarks to Charles that Arya is still so afraid of her. She sighs, admitting that with the king's support, her niece will never truly repent. Charles then decides to leave the gifts in her jewelry boutique for safekeeping, admitting he's only going to such trouble because Arya is her niece. He asks her to bear with it, promising that it won't be long before Arya pays for everything she's done. Later that night, Natalie admires the hairpin from Charles, still in a good mood. Her maid worries that wearing it to bed is dangerous, but Natalie brushes off the concern, only agreeing to take it off when the maid points out the expensive hairpin could get damaged. She gently places it on her nightstand before settling down to sleep. Sometime later, she's jolted awake by a commotion. She rushes out to find her stepsister Fiona, bloody and crying in their mother's arms, wailing that she's going to die. Natalie watches the scene unfold, her expression hardening as she realizes Arya has finally taken action. Her father, Lord Carlisle, pulls her aside, his face grim as he asks for her opinion on Fiona's injury. He doesn't believe it was an accident, suspecting it was Arya's doing because of Fiona's connection to Duke Bennox. He confesses he'd known for a while that Arya targets any woman who gets close to Charles, but selfishly hoped this would make Fiona distance herself from the Duke. Hearing this, Fiona's mother becomes enraged, accusing him of wanting Fiona to give up so Natalie can have everything. Natalie calmly watches her stepmother's tantrum, knowing she's twisting her father's words. Fiona herself cries out that she will never give up on Duke Bennox. Natalie interrupts the escalating argument, reminding them that it's all speculation and that Fiona needs to rest. After they leave, Fiona tearfully tells her mother that she must become the Duchess Bennox. Her mother holds her hand, her eyes dark with malice, promising she will remove all obstacles from her daughter's paths. Miles away, Charles receives a report from a cloaked subordinate. The man confirms that while Natalie is safe, Princess Arya sent someone to attack her stepsister. Following Charles's orders, they intervened, saving Fiona's life while allowing minor injuries. Charles's expression is ice-cold as he orders more men to protect Natalie, ensuring she is never in danger. He reflects on Arya, noting that she hasn't changed at all. She's still as vicious as ever. With his heart heavy with guilt, Natalie's father laments that Fiona's injury is all his fault, believing he should have warned them about the dangers of approaching Duke Charles. But Natalie calmly refutes this, insisting they wouldn't have listened anyway, so he shouldn't blame himself. She then drops a bombshell, revealing that her stepmother, Mrs. Helen, has known about Ryan's wicked nature for a long time but chose to conceal it. Her father is stunned, unable to comprehend why his wife would do such a thing. Natalie explains the twisted logic. Mrs. Helen considered Ryan a husband she had personally chosen for Natalie. This sends her father into a rage, who furiously questions when his wife was ever given the right to choose a husband for his daughter. The true venomous plan is then laid bare. Mrs. Helen coveted Illy, the man her father had picked for Natalie, for her own daughter Fiona. The entire scheme was to push Natalie into the arms of the disguised Ryan, marrying her off so Fiona could eventually alter herself. Seething with fury, her father declares he wants a divorce, unable to bear the thought of how his own daughter was plotted against under his roof. Natalie gently takes his hand, urging him to be patient. She asks him to feign ignorance for now, promising to settle the score with them after the royal banquet is over. But the deceptions run deeper still. Natalie reveals that Fiona is not the girl from Duke Charles's childhood memories. And Charles knew this all along, allowing the impersonation to proceed as a gambit to draw the attention of Princess Aria. She understands her father's fear. Princess Aria has wanted Natalie for herself for a long time, making an alliance with the powerful Duke Charles the safest option. Overwhelmed, her father feels utterly useless, but Natalie tenderly reassures him he's a wonderful father who gave her a happy life. She then reveals her own cold plan for vengeance. She will let them reap what they've sown by ensuring Fiona marries the very man they chose for her, Ryan. A glint of steel enters her eyes as she vows to see her plan through to the bitter end. Later that night, a letter is tossed into her room. She picks it up, realizing her investigator has returned far sooner than expected. The note is a simple request from Duke Charles asking to see her. Before she can even process it, the Duke himself vaults on her balcony, a striking figure in the moonlight. Natalie is stunned that he actually came. Charles looks her over, remarking that he can't tell her apart from her sister. A comment that puzzles Natalie since she isn't specially dressed. She remarks on how much taller he is now than when he was a child. And the statement hits Charles with the force of lightning. She confirms they met as children in the Crolla cemetery. A forgotten memory floods his mind, and he realizes with a jolt that she is the little girl he's been searching for. He gently takes her hand as Natalie explains that his dislike of desserts reminded her of the boy, but she never connected the two. The revelation makes Charles's heart sore. Natalie explains she had her guard Banai investigate because she felt it was wrong for Fiona to impersonate someone. Charles says it's not too late now that they've found each other, and he declares with unwavering certainty that he would have been drawn to her regardless, just as he was at the goddess's birthday party. Overcome with emotion, he pulls her into a tight embrace, whispering that it never mattered who that little girl was, only that it is asterisk her asterisk. Natalie is taken aback by this raw display of emotion, realizing how happy he truly is. She confesses she is also happy, feeling they are destined to be together. The intensity of the moment overwhelms her, and she suddenly pushes him away in a panic, telling him to leave. The very next day, Duke Charles arrives in full regalia at her mansion. Her father greets him, correctly guessing he's come to discuss marriage. After a formal greeting, Charles requests a private word and they retreat to the study. As they pass, Charles gives Mrs. Helen and Fiona a look of pure ice, making Natalie slightly uncomfortable despite knowing it's a necessary act. Inside the study, Charles wastes no time, formally begging for Natalie's hand in marriage. He acknowledges he's not the man her father wanted and that his presence brings danger from Princess Aria, but he makes a solemn promise to protect Natalie at all costs. Her father challenges him, but Charles explains that as the Duchess, Natalie will be shielded from secret attacks, and the king would never allow an open assault for the sake of national stability. Her father rises, his voice firm, and asks if Charles would dare swear an oath to the goddess of light to protect Natalie with his life. Without a moment's hesitation, Charles agrees, and a golden aura surrounds him as he swears his life to her protection. Meanwhile, Fiona waits anxiously, but her mother simply smiles, telling her to prepare to be a duchess. She advises Fiona to use her facial injury to gain Charles's sympathy and have him punish whoever hurt her. After Charles leaves, Natalie is summoned to the study. Her father informs her that he has given his consent for the marriage. Natalie is shocked, fearing Charles threatened him, but her father laughs it off. He explains that Charles made a promise, sealed by an unbreakable oath to the goddess of light to protect her with his very life. He tells her Charles did it because she is precious to him and worth it. Deeply moved, Natalie's eyes fill with tears. Her father then presents her with a velvet box, revealing the Bennox family heirloom jewelry, the symbol of her new station as the mistress of the Duke's mansion. Natalie's father tells her that her other gifts are at a jewelry shop she can visit anytime, but the most important one is here. He presents her with a box containing the proof of her identity as the mistress of the Bennox house, his eyes filled with a sad pride as he realizes his daughter will soon leave their home. Touched, Natalie wonders if he misses her already and steps forward to embrace him. Her father holds her close, assuring her that if she's not satisfied with her fiancé, they will simply change him. He gently pats her head, telling her that all she needs to do is make him happy, and that someday her tears will be useless. Natalie reassures him that she's quite satisfied and has no plans to change her fiancé. As long as he is happy, she is too. Changing the subject, she mentions wanting to recruit a new guard. Her father's expression immediately hardens when she explains the man has no identification and is a believer of the goddess of light, making him too dangerous and unknown. Natalie insists the man is trustworthy, reminding her father how he helped with the secret letter and how she was reborn thanks to a goddess fragment he provided. But her father is resolute, the matter is not negotiable, and he refuses to gamble with her safety. Natalie realizes the only way to get her father's approval is to have Banai prove his identity and clear all suspicion. Elsewhere, Charles receives a report that Miss Natalie has taken a man named Banai out with her as a bodyguard. The news is utterly unwelcome, and his eyes widen with shock and possessiveness. He confirms that she took the man out with her, and after a moment of cold fury, he instructs his subordinate to go back and keep a close watch on them, ensuring they are never out of surveillance. In a moving carriage, Banai wonders aloud if their errand is truly so urgent. He confides in Natalie that facing her father felt like a criminal being tortured, especially since Caroline's jewelry store only caters to nobility. Natalie explains that it's only because he is suspicious. Her father is just worried about her safety. Banai thanks her profusely, promising to always remember her kindness. But Natalie cheekily points out that since her father asked him to protect her, he's not losing out on the deal either. She then playfully calls him presumptuous for daring to ride in the same carriage as the young lady, and he sheepishly agrees, admitting he's a little guard who doesn't know the rules. As they arrive, Banai asks if she's sure the fragments are here. She admits she's not certain but was told to come have a look. Inside, a manager greets Miss Carlyle and immediately questions the identity of the man beside her. Thinking quickly, Natalie introduces him as her relative Banai Sessler. The manager accepts this and invites them both inside. Banai quietly expresses his surprise that Caroline, the person in charge, is so respectful to her. But Natalie's eyes narrow, sensing there are other people behind this encounter. As they approach a set of ornate doors, the manager informs them that they will have to separate. A distinguished guest is waiting for Natalie in another VIP room. Banai asks if he can trust the arrangement, and Natalie, suspecting the guest might be Grand Duchess Angelilla, tells him to just listen to the woman. She is then led away to a different VIP room. As the door creaks open, she steps inside to see a familiar figure. It's Charles. She's stunned, realizing he was the distinguished guest all along. She confirms she's there for the gift he mentioned, her mind racing with anxiety over how he'll react to Banai. Charles cuts straight to the point, asking about Banai and revealing he already knows she hired him as a guard. Natalie quickly explains that she couldn't stand by and watch him suffer after he'd helped her so much. Charles softens, stroking her hair, admitting he knows. He says that while he wants to send Banai a million miles away, he doesn't want her to feel guilty, conceding that the man has skills and will keep her safe, even if he's incredibly annoying. Overcome with emotion, Natalie tells him he's as nice as her father and leans in for a hug. As they embrace, she revels in the feeling of his strong chest and broad shoulders. But he breaks the silence by asking if he can kiss her. Flustered, she coughs and suggests they sit on the sofa first. He leads her over, but instead of sitting beside her, he pulls her directly onto his lap. A move that makes her blush furiously, he asks again if he can kiss her. But his touch triggers a horrifying memory, and a past trauma washes over her as she flinches away, crying out for him not to hit her. Charles freezes, completely astonished and hurt by her rejection. He gently assures her he won't force her if she doesn't want to, his mind racing with the possibility that she might not actually like him. Natalie, seeing his crestfallen face, feels a wave of guilt. She explains that it has nothing to do with him. She simply has a trauma about being touched on the neck. Tentatively, Charles asks if he can hug her and she agrees. He pulls her into a gentle embrace, apologizing for scaring her. Safe in his arms, the dam breaks and Natalie begins to sob uncontrollably, confessing she was terrified and thought she was going to die again. After her tears subside, she wipes her face, embarrassed for crying like a child. She shyly asks if she cried ugly, but Charles smiles warmly, telling her she's still beautiful and thinking he wants to marry her as soon as possible. Touched by his kindness, she asks him to close his eyes. With her heart pounding, she leans in and presses a soft kiss to his lips. As she pulls back, she loses her balance and he catches her, his eyes wide with surprise. Emboldened, Charles softly asks if he can kiss her again just for a moment. She starts to refuse, saying she just mustered up the courage for that one kiss. But he looks at her with such adorable, pleading eyes and drooping puppy ears that her resolve melts. She gives in, kissing him again. But this time he takes control, turning the tables and deepening the kiss. Just as the moment intensifies, a sharp knock echoes from the door, startling them both. Natalie uses the interruption to escape his grasp, her heart racing as she thinks he looked ready to devour her. The manager enters to announce that Master Banai has an urgent matter to discuss. A dark cloud passes over Charles's face as he icily tells the manager to let him come over, wanting to see just how urgent this business is. Natalie tries to pull her hand away, warning him that Banai will be there soon. But he only tightens his grip, his expression radiating pure resentment. Banai walks in, asking to speak with Natalie. Charles immediately challenges him, his voice dripping with menace as he asks what urgent matter interrupted his conversation. His glare promising a world of pain if the reason isn't good enough. Banai, flustered, insists it's not a rush, prompting Natalie to intervene and tell him to just say what he needs to. But Banai defiantly retorts that Charles is obviously causing trouble because he doesn't like him. That's the last straw. A wave of freezing energy erupts from Charles, forming sharp icicles that surround a terrified Banai. Banai yelps in shock, shouting that Charles is being cruel and trying to kill him over just a few words. With a flash of irritation, Charles tells the old man to shut up, finding him far too noisy. The man Banai is incensed, scolding Charles for his lack of respect and declaring he's from his grandfather's generation. Having calmed down, Banai gets to the point, announcing to Charles and Natalie that he has found what they were looking for. The person in charge told him the item is in the possession of Grand Duchess Angelilla. Charles is visibly shocked by this revelation, while Natalie silently pieces things together, realizing Banai must have approached her for this very purpose. Banai hesitates, wondering if Charles would even believe his full story. But Natalie gently urges him on, reminding him that he needs Charles's help and must explain everything clearly. With a resigned sigh, Banai begins. He addresses the Duke, bringing up the followers of the Goddess of Light, a statement Charles scoffs at, retorting that followers are everywhere. Banai dismisses them as fools using the goddess's name for personal gain, before declaring himself a true believer, unleashing a torrent of pure golden light from his hand that stuns Charles into silence. Charles demands to know how he possesses the power of the goddess, and Banai explains it all began over 60 years ago when he was just in his 20s. A revelation that makes Natalie's jaw drop as she realizes he's over 80 years old. The two exchange a bewildered glance over his impossible age. Banai launches into his tale, explaining his lifelong fascination with the Goddess of Light. At 21, he heard rumors of the goddess on Desar Island and immediately bought a boat to investigate, but his journey was cut short by a brutal pirate attack. Gravely wounded, he was thrown overboard and left for dead in the cold sea. When he next opened his eyes, he found himself on an unnamed island, surrounded by a host of strange, non-aggressive magical beasts. It was these creatures, he explains, that saved him using a fragment of the goddess, a relic that not only healed him but gifted him the power of light. He searched the entire island for more fragments but found none. The true horror dawned on him when he finally returned home, only to discover that 50 years had passed and his parents were long gone. Since that day, he has wandered the world searching for the goddess's remains. Natalie is stunned by his story, but Banai just winks, saying he's seen even more surprising things like rebirth. The comment makes Natalie avert her gaze nervously as Banai confirms he's seeking Grand Duchess Angelilla because he believes she has the shard he needs. Charles, seeing an opportunity, smirks and agrees to arrange a meeting. But on one condition, Banai must ensure Natalie's safety. Banai enthusiastically agrees, appointing himself her bodyguard. Just as the deal is struck, a commotion erupts outside as Princess Arya demands entry into the lounge, her shrill voice cutting through the door. The staff politely denies her, explaining they need the Grand Duke's permission, which only infuriates Arya further, accusing them of using her aunt to pressure her. The maid holds her ground and Arya finally storms off in a huff, seething internally that she would never forgive Natalie if she wasn't so afraid of her aunt's wrath. Once the coast is clear, Natalie trembles with fear. But Charles reassures her, explaining that Arya wouldn't dare cause trouble so soon after being punished by Grand Duchess Angelilla, who has been beating her for misdeeds since childhood. He then reveals the royal family's darkest secret. Arya is the illegitimate child of the king's favorite mistress, who was murdered by the late queen. In his grief and rage, the king executed the queen, and has doted on Arya ever since, with long-held plans to make her the crown princess. Natalie is horrified at the thought of such a cruel person taking the throne, knowing she would be the first to die. Charles calmly assures her that Arya will never be queen, suggesting they could support Grand Duchess Angelilla for the throne instead. Banai cheekily interrupts their plotting, asking if they aren't worried he'll leak their dangerous conversation. Charles dismisses him with a cold glare, stating no one would believe a charlatan, then warns him with a flash of menacing energy never to call Natalie Nolly. Deciding it's time to go, Charles suggests they jump out the window to avoid Arya. Natalie panics, insisting she can't jump from such a height, so Charles simply sweeps her into his arms. He tells her to trust him, explaining the yard below is secluded. She closes her eyes and agrees, leaving a stunned Banai behind, as Charles leaps gracefully to the ground. Once they've landed safely, Natalie calls for Banai, who suddenly appears beside her, having used a teleportation array. He teases them, saying he saw the Duke wanted to carry her and decided not to interrupt the young couple's moment. He then excuses himself to give the thin-skinned lover some privacy. Natalie asks Charles if he's upset about Arya, but he admits his remorse comes from knowing Arya would have hurt Natalie. She comforts him, insisting the fault lies with Arya's jealousy, not him. Charles agrees, turning his focus to the real problem. He asks Banai to escort Natalie home while he handles the matter with Angelilla. Banai requests they keep his agelessness a secret, which Charles readily agrees to. 2 days later, Natalie and Banai meet with Grand Duchess Angelilla, who graciously presents the jewelry she believes contains the fragment. Banai's eyes light up as he immediately identifies the necklace, feeling its immense power. Angelilla offers to give it to him on one condition, that after he has dealt with her niece's issue, he will come and work for her. Banai agrees, but only for 2 years, explaining his need to continue searching for the other fragments. With the deal struck, he holds up his 6th piece of the goddess's heart, showing Natalie how it differs from her own. She feels a strange pull towards it, wondering if it's connected to her rebirth. Seeing her talent, Angelilla offers Natalie a prestigious job at the Royal Library. Natalie is overwhelmed with joy, excitedly accepting the offer and thanking the Grand Duchess profusely for the incredible opportunity. Riding in a carriage with Ali, Natalie is overcome with excitement, asking if working in the Royal Library is really so thrilling. She gushes that of course it is. It's the largest library in the empire, filled with countless books she's always dreamed of seeing but was never allowed to enter. She sincerely thanks Ili, telling him that without the fragment he gave her, she would have disappeared from the world long ago, let alone have everything she does now. But Ili turns the tables, saying he should be the one thanking her. He confesses that he was in a dark place, disappointed and lonely on the anniversary of his parents' death, and it was her appearance that gave him a glimmer of hope. Natalie reassures him that his years of persistence are amazing and promises that when she starts her new job, she'll help him find information about the goddess of light. Overcome with emotion, Ili declares she's the only one nice to him and he wants to be her friend for life, a sentiment that earns a deadpan stare from a slightly bewildered Natalie. As her carriage returns, she runs into her sister, Fiona, who immediately questions why she's out with unhealed injuries. Natalie concocts a quick lie about feeling suffocated, her mind racing to hide the truth that she visited a black magic shop to buy banned drugs. When Fiona asks about her injured leg, Natalie spins a tale about being attacked by a madman with a stick, saved only by a kind stranger. Natalie internally notes that Fiona's miraculous recovery was likely Arya's doing again. Fiona's eyes land on Ili, and she coyly asks if this capable-looking man is Natalie's new guard. A sense of foreboding washes over Ili. Fiona then suggests Natalie lend her the guard until the royal banquet, where the Duke is expected to propose. Natalie flatly refuses, stating that he is not just her bodyguard but also her friend, and she can't promise him to anyone. Fiona seethes internally, enraged at being rejected by the future mistress of a Duke's mansion, but forces a smile and says she'll just ask the Duke for guards instead. As they part ways, Fiona mutters bitterly about why the Duke hasn't come to see her yet. Back inside, their mother fusses over Fiona's injury, immediately blaming it on the women who admire the Duke. She tries to pressure Natalie into giving some of her own guards to Fiona, but Natalie's father steps in, reminding his wife that the guards only obey her grandfather's orders. The mother then shifts her focus to Ili, suggesting he protect Fiona, but Natalie again insists it's his choice to make. The mother attempts to bribe him with any reward, touting the honor of working for a future duchess. But Ili scoffs, coldly stating he doesn't want to and that the future queen herself begged him to work for her, leaving their mother stunned into silence. Their father, tired of the drama, tells his wife to simply hire new guards if she wants them. Defeated for now, she agrees, clutching her dress in silent frustration. As their father leaves for the palace, Natalie feels a pang of disappointment that she couldn't share her good news with him first. Later that night, Natalie spots a figure on her balcony and realizes it's Charles waiting for her. He presents her with freshly cut flowers, as she excitedly tells him that Grand Duchess Angelica arranged for her to work at the Royal Library. Charles smiles, already aware of the news, and presents her with a celebratory gift. He explains the Grand Duchess had offered a different position first, but he suggested the library would make her happier. He reveals the Duchess is fighting to create more opportunities for women, a political move to support Princess Arya's rise to the throne. Natalie is deeply impressed, pledging her support, and the two share a tender moment, praising each other. She then confides in him her deep-seated fear that this happiness is just a dream, that she'll wake up to find it's all fake. haunted by the traumatic memory of Ryan's fist. Charles listens, his heart aching, knowing his own investigation into her past trauma yielded nothing. He comforts her, confessing he feels the same way because his happiness with her feels unreal. He vows to always be with her before leaning in for a kiss. But Natalie pulls back with a confession. Her feelings for him weren't real when she first confessed. It was an accident. Charles's heart skips a beat as he asks if she likes him now. She answers with a decisive like, and he smiles, admitting he knew all along she had intended to confess to Ellie. He recounts the night of the party, how he was drawn to her calculating gaze, following her and stopping her out of sheer curiosity. When Ellie appeared, he was forced to lie. He admits he later regretted his actions, terrified she would get hurt because of him, and tried to push her away, reminding himself she was his nephew's blind date. But he couldn't stay away, she had completely captured his heart. He apologizes for everything, taking all the blame. Natalie gently reassures him that it's not his fault, and in a way they have Princess Aria to thank for bringing them together. Charles then makes a shocking confession of his own. He fell in love with her that night at the party. Stunned, Natalie realizes how long she unknowingly deceived him, feeling a wave of guilt, but he simply kisses her, eager to marry her as soon as possible. Elsewhere, Fiona's mother frets over her daughter's injured leg, despairing over the upcoming banquet and the disappearance of the black magician they hired. Fiona grabs her arm, insisting she must be in perfect condition for the Duke, and that they will find a way, her face twisted in a mask of vengeful fury as she vows to make her enemies suffer. The next morning, Princess Aria sips her tea, inquiring about the Bennox mansion. She's puzzled when her maid reports that everything is normal. Charles didn't react at all to the news of Natalie's injury. A dark suspicion clouds her mind. Clenching her fist, she decides she cannot allow Charles to propose at the banquet. In a sudden rage, she sweeps the tea set from the table, her eyes burning with malice as she declares that the carriage from Earl Carlisle's palace will never reach the banquet safely. At the Grand Duke's palace, Charles is jolted awake not by the morning sun, but by the imposing figure of his father looming over his bed. He groggily complains that his father's staring is making it impossible to sleep, revealing he only just drifted off after watching over Natalie until dawn. His father interrogates him about his all-nighter, asking what sort of bad things he was up to, but Charles deflects, calling it a personal matter. The Duke presses on, demanding to know if the scandalous rumors spreading about him are true. With a weary look, Charles confirms that the truths he released were indeed his own doing. Before the Duke can explode, a young man, Charles's nephew, interjects, pointing out how his uncle doesn't even take his grandfather seriously anymore. The conversation then shifts to the impending royal banquet, where the Duke asks if Charles truly intends to propose. Charles confirms it without hesitation, his mind already made up. His father insists he's too young to rush into marriage, but Charles smirks, reminding the Duke that he's always been the one calling him old. The nephew erupts, declaring he can't let Fio become the mistress of the mansion, and the Duke roars in agreement, vowing he will never allow such a person to be his daughter-in-law. Charles calmly glances at a document, simply saying he knows, but he has his own plans for handling it. Enraged by his son's defiance, the Duke storms out, warning Charles that if he brings that woman into the palace, he can stop calling him father. As the Duke leaves, the nephew complains that his grandfather should have scolded his uncle more harshly to wake him up. Charles turns his cold gaze on the boy, asking why he's so eager to see him reprimanded. The nephew claims he's just afraid his uncle will choose the wrong person and regret it for the rest of his life, pushing him to choose Miss Natalie, a woman he describes as a perfect match, gentle, beautiful, and smart. Charles simply tells him to go comfort his grandfather, leaving the boy stunned by his lack of reaction. Alone, Charles muses with a faint smile that his family seems to really like Natalie. Meanwhile, in her chambers, Princess Aria receives a report from her maid. They successfully delivered the information about Duke Carlisle's stepdaughter to the old Duke, but he failed to persuade Charles and left in a rage. Aria's eyes narrow with cold fury. It seems she'll have to take matters into her own hands, starting with the Earl of Carlisle's mansion. At that very mansion, Natalie is vexed to learn that Fiona is out, wondering why she isn't resting her injured foot. Her maid relays a strange report. Except for the new foot injury, all of Miss Fiona's previous injuries have miraculously healed. Natalie's suspicion spikes. Fiona had a broken hand just days ago, how could it heal so fast? The puzzle clicks into place. Fiona's injuries healed asterisk by asterisk going out, which means her supposed foot injury was just an excuse. Realizing something sinister is afoot, Natalie decides she needs to investigate, tasking her maid Bella with secretly delivering a letter to Charles to borrow his people. The reply comes back in a shocking 10 minutes containing two terrifying words, Black Mage. Natalie and Bella are horrified. Natalie knew her stepmother had done something shameful, but she never imagined they would be bold enough to contact a forbidden black magician. In the continent of Ser, while everyone believes in a benevolent goddess, there also exist evil gods whose followers call themselves black magicians. Though few in number, their dark influence has instigated wars, toppled empires, and orchestrated the downfall of royal families through manipulation and bloodshed. They are puppets of chaos, pulling the strings of power from the shadows. Because of this, anyone found involved with a black magician is executed as a heretic without question. Realizing the grave danger, Natalie resolves to cut all ties with her stepmother and stepsister immediately after the banquet to protect her family's name. She seethes at Mrs. Helen's foolishness, a mother so devoted to her daughter that she would risk everything by scheming against Natalie and her father. After instructing Bella to burn the damning letter, Fiona suddenly appears at the door in a wheelchair, demanding to know what took so long. Bella expertly lies, claiming she was tidying the bathroom after giving Natalie a massage. Fiona brings a freshly made dessert, insisting her sister try it. Immediately wary, Natalie suspects the cake is drugged, but decides it's safer to keep the threat in plain sight. Fiona then invites Natalie to the banquet, pretending to be nervous and needing her sister for support. Internally, Natalie scoffs at the act, wondering why Fiona isn't afraid of being upstaged. Fiona's true motive is far more sinister. She plans to use Natalie as a human shield, hoping any attackers will be dealt with by Natalie's guards, or better yet, get rid of Natalie for good. Seeing the transparent plot, Natalie agrees to go, deciding to face the danger head-on. Fiona gushes with false gratitude, while Natalie offers her own barbed thanks for blocking the bullet, a comment that flies right over Fiona's head. As Fiona gloats, Natalie thinks grimly that her stepsister deserves everything that's coming to her. On the day of the banquet, Fiona puts on a brave face, claiming she can bear her foot pain for the Duke. Their escort arrives, led by Bonnie Bouvestin, the vice principal of the Duke's Knights. Fiona is ecstatic, seeing this as proof that the Duke adores her. Natalie informs Bonnie that her father is unwell, a lie to keep him safe from Princess Aria's schemes. As they travel in the ornate carriage, Fiona and her mother can't contain their glee, openly gloating in front of Natalie about how valued Fiona is. Fiona even feigns an apology for liking the Duke, a clear jab at Natalie. Natalie forces a smile, her mind racing with irritation at their cluelessness and the impending danger. Her thoughts are cut short when Bonnie's sharp voice cries out a warning: unidentified individuals are approaching. Panic erupts as Fiona screams that the attackers are back, but Natalie remains perfectly calm, watching the scene unfold with cold eyes. Meanwhile, at the palace, Charles stands before the king, formally announcing his plan to propose that night. The king is already aware and worried, reminding Charles of Princess Aria's violent jealousy. Charles confirms that Aria is the problem, revealing that for years she has ensured any woman who got close to him was either maimed or killed. He then delivers the crucial blow. Aria knows about the proposal and has sent people to stop it. With grim determination, Charles makes his request. The king must recall Aria's people and forbid the princess from attending the banquet. The king glares down from his throne, calling out to Charles, who meets his gaze with cold defiance, asking if he's being threatened. Charles warns the monarch not to make an enemy of the Duke Bennock's mansion just for Princess Aria's sake, a calculated move that leaves the king with no choice. The king lets out a defeated sigh and summons his aide, ordering him to dispatch men to protect Earl Carlisle's mansion and escort them safely to the banquet hall. Having bent the king to his will, Charles coolly reminds His Majesty of his own request, asking for his help with Aria. He makes it clear that the Bennock's family is neutral and will only support a monarch who truly cares for their people, a veiled threat that makes the king's blood boil. With his business concluded, Charles gives a curt bow and takes his leave, leaving the king to stew in his throne room, realizing with growing dread that Duke Bennox is becoming far too powerful and difficult to control. Elsewhere, Princess Aria is admiring a new selection of jewels when her father storms in. He coldly informs her that he has already ordered the men she sent to be stopped, a declaration that makes her jump to her feet in shock. He commands her to give up on Charles and to stop targeting anyone close to him ever again. He had hoped she could win Charles over, but now that he has a fiancé, her schemes are finished. Aria's face contorts with rage as she shrieks that Charles is hers, and she is the only one worthy of him. Her father tries to reason with her, but she clings to him desperately, weeping and demanding to know why he didn't just force Charles to marry her. The king explains that the Bennox family is too prestigious and powerful. Forcing the Duke's hand would jeopardize her future on the throne. At this, Aria snaps, screaming that she doesn't care about the throne, she only wants Charles. Enraged by her foolishness, the king bellows that she has lost her mind and orders her to be confined to her palace until she reflects on her actions. As she's dragged away, she screams in protest, unable to believe her father would do this to her. Meanwhile, on the road, knights are ordered to protect a carriage. But inside, Fiona and her mother are already plotting their next move, with the mother promising to remove any obstacles in her daughter's path. Natalie watches them, a pit of suspicion in her stomach as she wonders if they're trying to get rid of the very people sent to protect them. Outside, the king's men clash with another group, only to realize it's a misunderstanding. They were all sent to protect the Earl's mansion. Fiona, hearing this, beams with delight, certain that Charles must have sent these men specially for her, already seeing herself as the Duchess. Natalie scoffs internally at the delusion, knowing Charles was likely forced by the king. Suddenly, the fragile peace is shattered as a man is violently cut down by an unknown assailant. His death a horrific spectacle for Fiona to witness. Back at the royal banquet, guests murmur as they watch Duke Bennox stand alone on a balcony, wondering if he's waiting for his fiancée from the Carlisle family. Charles's calm facade begins to crack with impatience and worry, a growing feeling that something has gone wrong. His companion tries to reassure him, mentioning she sent extra people just in case, but Charles is no longer at ease and decides he must go see for himself. Just as he's about to leave, his guards arrive, reporting that their mission to protect the people was a success. Angelina remarks on how reliable his subordinates are, and he simply agrees it is for the good of the empire. A fanfare announces the arrival of King Carmelo Alfredo, who descends the stairs to give a grand speech about the empire's strength. After the applause dies down, Charles approaches the king, calmly asking if he needs His Majesty's presence for what's about to happen. The king simply nods, giving his permission. A hush falls over the hall as Charles descends the stairs, his gaze fixed on the Carlisle family. Fiona's heart pounds with excitement, convinced that after this night, the entire empire will know her as the future Duchess Bennox. Charles stops before them and announces to the silent room that he has good news. He introduces himself and then declares his wish to propose to Countess Natalie Carlisle. The world shatters for Fiona, who steps forward in disbelief, trying to correct him that her name is Fiona. Charles's expression turns to ice as he tells her to have some self-respect, deftly avoiding her touch. He then turns his gaze to Natalie, his voice softening as he states it is her he likes, and she is the one he always intended to propose to. In front of everyone, he kneels and presents a stunning ring, asking Natalie to marry him. As a tearful Natalie accepts, Fiona screams that this is all wrong. Charles places the ring on Natalie's finger, his eyes only for her as he whispers that it has always been her, only her. Natalie turns to her sister with a look of feigned pity, apologizing that matters of the heart can't be forced. She then twists the knife, reminding Fiona that what belongs to someone else can't be taken, and that by impersonating another, none of the glory was ever truly hers. Fiona explodes, shrieking that the Duke clearly likes her and accusing Natalie of seducing him. Charles's patience finally snaps and he roars for her to shut up. He states plainly that he never liked her, he has always liked Natalie. When Fiona demands to know why he sent a gift, he explains it was for the entire family as she is Natalie's sister. He takes Natalie's hand and announces one last time that she is his fiancée and the future Duchess, and he will not hear another unkind word against her. Charles then reveals his trump card, smiling coldly as he remarks on Fiona's nerve for impersonating someone so brazenly. The color drains from Fiona's face as she realizes he knows everything, her mind reeling with the fear that he might kill her. Ignoring her terror, Charles leads Natalie away to greet the king, leaving Fiona's mother to seethe in silent fury, vowing that Natalie would pay for this humiliation. After receiving congratulations and gifts from the king and Angelina, Charles asks Natalie if she's happy. She is, but she would be even happier if they could marry soon. As the couple shares a tender moment, Angelina asks about an associate named Banai. Charles's mood darkens as he reveals Banai is investigating the assassins, who seem to be using dark magic. He broods over the new threat, wondering who would target Natalie with such forbidden powers. In her locked room, Princess Aria trashes her chambers, consumed by rage and obsession, whispering that Charles is hers. A dark, shadowy voice echoes in her room, offering her a deal to get everything she desires. A terrifying creature of blue and black flame emerges from the darkness, introducing itself with a sinister smile as Master Pinjuang. The Empress's eyes harden with resolve as she and Charles discuss the resurfacing of the dark magician, a foe who has been missing for years and is undoubtedly plotting something catastrophic. She vows to eradicate them from the continent once and for all, but for now she sets the grim topic aside, urging them to enjoy Natalie's engagement party. A moment later, Charles takes a steadying breath and approaches Natalie, formally asking the beautiful lady for a dance. With a gentle smile, she accepts his hand, saying it would be her pleasure. The Empress watches them go with a knowing look as they descend the grand staircase hand in hand. As they reach the dance floor, Natalie notices the intense stares of the other guests, a wave of unease washing over her. Charles, ever perceptive, squeezes her hand reassuringly, telling her the malicious gaze is gone now, his quick action earning a genuine smile of praise from her. As they begin to waltz, Natalie leans in close and whispers the word he's longed to hear, my fiancé. A deep blush floods Charles's cheeks as he stammers, asking her to say it again, his innocent reaction making Natalie's heart flutter. Finding his shyness adorable, she repeats the words with a soft blush of her own, suggesting they should dance. Overcome with joy, Charles can only agree. They move across the floor with a grace that captivates the onlookers. From a balcony above, the Empress observes how utterly smitten Charles is with Natalie, reflecting that he's finally beginning to look like a young man in love. Natalie marvels at his skill, and Charles cheekily replies that it's all thanks to his fiancée taking such good care of him. Later, beneath the starry sky, Charles introduces Natalie to her new personal bodyguard, Bonnie Bouviston, a highly skilled swordswoman from the Duke's knightly order. He explains that with Bonnie protecting her, Panay will be free, and he admits that if he weren't burdened with other duties, he would gladly protect her himself. Bonnie pledges her service as an honor. Unseen in the shadows, a hooded figure corners a terrified blonde woman, promising her anything she desires if she just follows his instructions. In the privacy of their carriage, Charles expresses his overwhelming happiness, finally able to call her his fiancée and hold her hand openly. He cups her face, vowing to always be by her side and protect her through any difficulty, and with him there, she feels she isn't afraid of anything. They lean in for a tender kiss, only to be interrupted by a cheerful white-haired man who pops in to greet them. The man quickly realizes his poor timing and scurries away, leaving a furious Charles in his wake. Natalie correctly deduces he was intentionally trying to bother them, avoiding any useful discussion of the dark magician. Charles grumbles that the man is disgusting and declares that he only likes her, before their conversation turns serious again. They acknowledge the grave danger the dark magician poses, and Charles warns Natalie to stay close to her guards, reminding her that she is a target. Natalie agrees, her mind flashing back to a dark memory. She knows the stakes better than anyone, for she has already died once. They both agree to be wary of the treacherous mother and daughter in her own family. Their carriage pulls to a stop before the Carlisle mansion, and Natalie's father rushes out to meet them, his face etched with worry. He pulls her into a tight embrace, relieved that she's all right after hearing she was in danger. He then turns to Charles, thanking him for protecting Natalie, but Charles insists on being called by his name, stating it is his duty to protect his fiancée. The Earl laughs, pleased with the arrangement. Just then, Madame Helen and Fiona arrive, putting on a show of fake concern that earns them a chilling glare from Natalie. Charles informs the Earl about Bonnie's new role as bodyguard, and the Earl formally entrusts his daughter's safety to her. Fiona clenches her fists, seething with jealousy at the attention Natalie is receiving. After Charles departs, the family gathers inside, where Madame Helen presents a plate of desserts she claims to have made herself. But Natalie's expression is ice. In one swift, shocking movement, she flips the entire table, sending the food crashing to the ground. Her stepmother shrieks, calling her crazy and demanding to know what she's doing. Helen feigns outrage at the waste, but internally she panics, wondering if Natalie has discovered her embezzlement. Natalie stares down at her coldly, asking what Madame Helen thinks she is doing. With lethal calm, Natalie calls for a maid named Bella and orders her to reveal what was in the food. Bella falls to her knees, trembling as she confesses that the dessert was poisoned. Sobbing, she reveals that Madame Helen had bewitched her with promises of wealth and power for Fiona if Natalie were out of the way. The Earl explodes in fury, roaring Helen's name. Helen desperately denies the accusation, screaming that she's being slandered. But Natalie is unmoved. She orders Bella to search their rooms for the rest of the poison. As Helen begins to panic, Fiona whispers that she disposed of it all, confident there is no evidence. The Earl, his face a grim mask, summons a doctor to test the food and declares that if they are found guilty, they will be thrown out of his house. As Helen pleads her innocence, the Earl reflects that he never would have believed he was living with such a viper had Natalie not opened his eyes. Natalie watches her stepmother's practice performance, impressed by her composure after years of deception. She sits them both down, telling them not to worry because she won't lay a hand on them. She'll simply let the law deliver their punishment. Just then, the maids rush back in, presenting a bottle they found in their room. Bella confirms it's the poison. Helen's face goes pale as she denies ever seeing it before. Natalie picks up the bottle, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she presents the witness testimony and the physical proof. Cornered and exposed, Helen finally snaps, pointing a trembling finger and screaming that Natalie framed her. A small, cold smile touches Natalie's lips as she thinks to herself, her plan having come to perfect fruition. She coolly asks why. Knowing the answer perfectly well, it was to settle accounts, and Anna had been following her orders from the very beginning. The results are in, and the verdict is damning. An expert confirms the toxin in the dessert is a perfect match for the poison in the bottle, but that's not all. A second slow-acting poison designed to cause dementia was also present. Thankfully, neither the Earl nor his daughter Natalie have been affected. After dismissing the experts, the Earl's warm demeanor vanishes, replaced by an icy calm as he turns to his wife, Madame Helen. He asks if she has anything left to say, but she can only offer tearful, pathetic denials that it wasn't her. With chilling finality, he declares that since no harm was done, he won't pursue the matter, but she is to leave the mansion immediately. Her facade shatters into rage and disbelief as she shrieks that he can't just cast her aside. Watching the drama unfold, Natalie scoffs internally, recognizing this pathetic act for what it is. Her father tells her they are leaving, and as they turn their backs, Madame Helen's fury finds its true target, screaming that this is all Natalie's fault. The Earl doesn't even look back, his silence a heavier blow than any words. Madame Helen crumbles, crying out why he won't accept her after all these years, claiming her ambition was nurtured by his exclusion. But the Earl cuts through her delusion, reminding her of the truth. She was the one who approached him with a collaboration agreement. A flashback reveals the cold, businesslike nature of their arrangement. She sought a safe haven to raise her child, and he needed someone to care for Natalie. He made it clear from the start that his heart belonged only to his deceased wife. He gave her status, but her greed consumed her, wanting to devour the entire estate. Natalie is stunned by the revelation. This woman had tricked her into calling her mother for years. Her daughter Fiona is equally shocked, asking if they were truly never husband and wife. Madame Helen defiantly spits that it doesn't matter. The Earl turns to Natalie, his expression softening as he apologizes, explaining he only brought them in so she wouldn't be lonely. Natalie takes his hand, reassuring him that it's okay now that he's safe. But across the room, Madame Helen's eyes burn with a murderous hatred, thinking she should have killed the girl years ago. Natalie feels the chilling intent, a silent acknowledgement of the woman's true nature. The Earl coldly tells them to take their leave, not even offering to see them out. Defeated, Fiona worriedly asks her mother what they'll do now. Later, Natalie's maid wonders if they're truly just letting them go. A dark, calculating smile plays on Natalie's lips as she declares that she will repay them for everything they did in her past life. When the maid questions why she let them take so much jewelry, Natalie explains it's all part of a larger trap. For a greedy man like Ryan, wealth is the ultimate bait, and she plans to bind him and Fiona together for life. She instructs her maid, Anna, to send word to Ryan that Fiona has left the mansion a very wealthy woman. Natalie then praises Anna for her excellent work, revealing the depth of her planning. From the moment she brought Anna into the house, she knew Madame Helen would be suspicious, so she assigned her to the unassuming role of a dessert maker. Over time, Anna's diligence allowed her to infiltrate the kitchen staff and discover which foods were being tampered with, saving Natalie and her father from the slow poison. As a reward, Natalie makes Anna the new head of the kitchen. Their celebration is interrupted by a silver-haired man who appears suddenly. He brings grave news, stating that the black magician who has been targeting the royal family is now after her. Natalie is confused, wondering why they would target a follower of the goddess of light. He theorizes that the fragments she used to regenerate her body may have made her a unique target. While Natalie wishes for such power to protect her family, the man paints a grim picture of his own immortal life. A lonely existence of constant running, hiding, and forced farewells, asking if she truly desires such a fate. 2 days later, on the day of her inauguration at the Royal Library, a handsome man named Charles arrives. He gives her a welcome gift and reassures her nervous heart, promising to drive her to and from work every day. Standing before the grand library doors, Natalie steels her nerves, reminding herself that after facing death, a new job is trivial. She introduces herself to the curator, Glengarde, who gives her a warm welcome. Natalie is ecstatic, feeling it's a dream to be surrounded by so many precious books. The curator, understanding her passion, shows her to the library's most valuable collection, granting her permission to read them. As she eagerly reaches for a book, she's greeted by a new colleague, Amy Kexler. Amy kindly begins explaining the workflow, detailing the tasks of organizing, inventory, and handling delicate ancient texts. Seeing Natalie diligently taking notes, Amy laughs and tells her not to be so nervous. But just as she offers her help, a blast of dark energy erupts from below, shattering the very staircase they stand on and plunging them into chaos. With a sharp cry of warning, Natalie's companion shoves her aside just as a massive bookshelf crashes to the ground with a deafening roar. Catching her breath, the woman expresses her terror, grateful to Natalie for the quick thinking that saved her from being crushed. Their frantic exchange is interrupted by Fanny Chrysler, who rushes over demanding to know what happened and if they are all right. The woman shakily explains that the bookshelf simply collapsed without warning. But after introductions are made between Fanny and Natalie Carlyle, the elderly librarian Glenn Gard arrives in a panic. He dismisses the concern over damaged books, relieved that no one was injured, and orders his men to investigate the structural integrity of every shelf in the library. But Natalie's sharp eyes tell a different story. With cold certainty, she declares it wasn't an accident but the work of a person. Glenn is stunned, questioning how this could be, but Natalie calmly explains she was facing the shelf and saw a figure dart away just as it fell. Her friend corroborates her story, confirming the shelf was perfectly stable yesterday. As shock turns to outrage among the onlookers, Natalie's gaze locks onto a man in the crowd, and with a single, unwavering finger she accuses him. The man sputters in denial, demanding proof, but Natalie's mind is a steel trap. She recounts every detail she saw in that fleeting moment, the ink on his left shirt and the emerald ring on his right hand, noting that he's been nervously facing her ever since he arrived. Pressured by the librarian, the man is forced to turn, revealing the damning fresh ink stain on his back for all to see. Cornered and exposed, he finally explodes with rage, admitting he did it because he can't stand Natalie, accusing her of getting her position through connections. Fanny immediately shuts him down, reminding him that he also got his job through favors after failing his exam. As he's berated for his selfish and dangerous actions, Natalie steps forward, a chilling calm in her voice as she realizes this pathetic attack must be connected to Arya. The man inadvertently confirms her suspicion, ranting about the stupid plan he was given. Just then, a figure in a royal guard uniform strides in, interrupting the chaos. Natalie is surprised to see it's Bonnie Booviston, who announces herself as the new patrol captain for the library. After Glenn explains the situation, Bonnie is told the man was plotting murder. The culprit desperately tries to claim he only wanted to teach Natalie a lesson, but Bonnie coldly orders him taken away for investigation, his pleas of innocence echoing in the hall. Bonnie offers assistance with the bookshelf, but Glenn politely declines, and she takes her leave with a professional nod. The other women gush over how cool Bonnie was, wondering how a high-ranking knight became a library captain and speculating it must be for Natalie's sake, a thought Natalie coyly dismisses. As the culprit is dragged away, he protests that he was just supposed to be part of a plea that Bonnie ignores. His terror escalates when he tries to use Duke Bennox's name, only for Bonnie to turn on him with a threatening glare that makes him retract his words instantly. He is brought before the king and Duke Bennox, where he presents a letter from Princess Arya as evidence. After reading it, the weary king admits it was his oversight, prompting the duke to offer to discipline the princess himself, an offer the king waves away, promising it's the last time. Later, the duke explains to Natalie that his men intercepted Arya's letter yesterday, allowing him to turn her foolish plan against her. He vows to sever Arya's connections to prevent future trouble, dismissing any threat from the captured man, stating coldly that he could easily take his life if necessary. Changing the subject, he mentions his father's visit to her home, a calculated move by the old duke in response to rumors about a different betrothal, all part of their plan. The duke admits that thanks to Natalie, his father has become far more patient. Meanwhile, at Natalie's home, the two fathers are bonding, with the old duke promising to treat Natalie like his own daughter and even inviting her father to live with them. Their pleasant chat is interrupted by the arrival of Natalie and the duke. The families waste no time discussing the wedding date, with the duke proposing a beautiful ceremony next spring, an idea Natalie adores. The fathers readily agree, promising a grand wedding, with Natalie's father stating his only concern is her happiness. In a starkly different setting, Princess Arya seethes in a dark room, furious over her plan's failure. A cloaked figure emerges from the shadows, offering her a deal, her soul in exchange for Natalie's death and Charles's love. Desperate and consumed by hatred, Arya accepts, and a dark pact is sealed with swirling black magic. Soon after, her father the king confronts her, questioning her sanity. But Arya's ambition has taken a new, terrifying form. She looks her father in the eye and declares that she now wants the throne. The king is ecstatic, revealing this was his plan all along. But Arya internally scoffs that his methods are too slow. Playing the part of the dutiful daughter, she agrees to his plans but makes one request, that he send Charles away so she can get over her feelings for him, a malicious smile gracing her lips.